Chapter 1 Xun'er, let's get divorced. Xun'er, let's get a divorce. On the balcony of the bamboo house, Gu Fei turned around, looking at Xun'er, who had just returned to her room with a bright smile on her face, and said calmly, "What did you say?" In the room, Xun'er was clearly stunned after hearing Gu Fei's words. Then, she looked at Gu Fei in disbelief, thinking she had misheard. "I said, let's get a divorce." Gu Fei looked at Xun'er with calm eyes, his voice as firm as before. He was originally from Blue Star, and after a car accident, he unexpectedly transmigrated to the fighting Qi Continent. Moreover, he became the grandson of Gu Lai, the 8-star Du Sheng Black Annihilation King of the Gu clan. Gu Fei was only 1 year older than Xun'er. They were childhood sweethearts. However, a few years later, Clan Chief Gu Yuan suddenly decided to have Xun'er go undercover in Wootton City. Subscribe for more amazing novel audiobooks. Don't forget to like, comment, and share infinite novel audio. To seize the opportunity to find the Xiao clan's Chuosh ancient Emperor Jade. At that time, although Gu Fei wanted to stop him, he was only a few years old and held insufficient weight in the Gu clan. He was completely unable to change the decision made by Gu Yuan, the clan chief. He could only watch as Xun'er was sent out of the ancient world by Gu Yuan. After that, Gu Fei secretly swore that he would find a way to bring Xun'er back. Over 10 years, Gu Fei's cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds, making him the most dazzling genius in the Gu clan, even overshadowing Gu Qingyang, who was once designated as the young clan leader. His prestige in the Gu clan even surpassed many of the older elders. Afterward, Gu Fei applied to the Gu clan elder council to bring the clan chief's daughter back to the Gu clan, and he also expressed his intention to marry Xun'er. With his current status, position, and unparalleled cultivation talent, even Gu Yuan was very optimistic. Gu Yuan immediately agreed to the marriage between him and Xun'er. After Xun'er was brought back to the ancient world, clan chief Gu Yuan personally arranged the marriage between Gu Fei and Xun'er. However, although they were married for half a year, Xun'er refused to consummate the marriage with Gu Fei, not even allowing him to touch her. Her attitude towards Gu Fei was even colder than towards a stranger. For more than half a year, Gu Fei did his best to treat Xun'er well. However, all of this seemed to be unrequited. Xun'er simply did not appreciate it. The reason Xun'er was so happy today was because Ling Ying brought back news about Xiao Yan from outside the ancient world. Before this, she had already asked Ling Ying to send the Gu clan's core Du technique scrolls to Xiao Yan. Not only that, she was even willing to give away the subflame of the Golden Emperor Sky Burning Flame. And this time, she also asked Ling Ying to bring a message, arranging to meet Xiao Yan in Wootton City 3 months later. As Xun'er's husband, Gu Fei had never received a gift from Xun'er. Now, Xun'er was even planning to meet another man privately. How could Gu Fei tolerate this? You, Gu Fei. Don't be absurd, we've only been married for half a year. Xun'er had a bad premonition in her heart. Her pretty face tensed up and she said seriously. Gu Fei did not answer, merely looking at Xun'er calmly, without any emotion in his eyes. Seeing Gu Fei's reaction, Xun'er already realized that Gu Fei was not joking. No, I don't agree. Xun'er's expression changed and she shook her head. Haven't we gotten along well since we got married? We've never argued. Where have I wronged you for you to want a divorce? I absolutely refuse to divorce. Xun'er pursed her lips, staring intently at Gu Fei. As the clan chief's daughter and with extremely high talent, she shone all over. If she divorced Gu Fei, it would likely attract many malicious speculations from others, and her reputation would be ruined. She would never allow such a thing to happen. Ding. Xun'er has generated angry emotions. Emotion value plus 100. At this moment, the familiar system prompt sounded in Gu Fei's mind. Initially, after Xun'er left the Gu clan, Gu Fei was very dejected. It was then that he bound the emotion upgrade system. By collecting the emotion values of various people with luck, he could upgrade his various abilities. It was precisely because of this clear upgrade system that Gu Fei was able to grow rapidly to his current level over these 10 years. Getting along well, looking at the extremely serious expression on Xun'er's face, Gu Fei couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. What right do you have to disagree with a divorce? The former Xun'er was cold, but not without gentleness, but now all Gu Fei saw was coldness. Even after their marriage, nothing had changed. They were like strangers. Why do I not have the right? Why do you get to decide on a divorce just because you say so? Xun'er was angered by the cold laugh on Gu Fei's face and roared hysterically. Heh heh, you're practically about to have an affair and you still ask me why. Gu Fei sneered again. He had loved this woman for many years. Now he had finally made up his mind to sever ties with her, having an affair. Hearing the words Gu Fei used, Xun'er's body couldn't help but tremble. Ding. Xun'er has generated extremely angry emotions. Emotion value plus 200. You're talking nonsense. When did I have an affair? You are insulting me. Xun'er's delicate body trembled slightly as she pointed at Gu Fei and loudly retorted. I'm talking nonsense. A hint of disdain suddenly appeared in Gu Fei's eyes. He didn't expect this woman to still deny it at this point. He said loudly, Who did you meet just now? Did you think no one knew? Elder Ling is my elder. During my years in the ancient world, Elder Ling took care of me entirely. Is it wrong for me to maintain contact with Elder Ling? Hearing Gu Fei's words, Xun'er was very unconvinced and retorted self-righteously. It's not wrong to contact Ling Ying, but when you contact Ling Ying, you're concerned about someone else. You care more about that old lover of yours than you do about me, your husband. Gu Fei spoke sarcastically. Xun'er's gaze immediately flitted away. Ding. Xun'er has generated panicked plus angry emotions. Emotion value plus 100. Nonsense, what old lover? I stayed in the Xiao family for so many years. I just treated him like a brother, like family. Is it wrong for me to care a little more about my family? Seeing Xun'er continue to quibble, the sarcasm in Gu Fei's eyes intensified. Heh heh, a relative with no blood relation. Is it worth you secretly sending out the clan's secret Dou techniques, and even the subflame of the Golden Emperor sky burning flame without telling your clan members? Gu Fei sneered. Is it worth you paying attention to everything that happens to him every moment, and even agreeing on the next meeting time? Are you already fantasizing about how you'll tightly embrace your brother at your next meeting? As he spoke, Gu Fei's eyes were filled with disdain and disgust. For a woman whose heart did not belong to him, no matter how beautiful she was, Gu Fei no longer intended to linger. Chapter 2. Not consummating the marriage means you are not prepared. You. Looking at Gu Fei's eyes and his dismissive tone, Xun'er's heart trembled violently. During this time, Gu Fei had always been very solicitous and caring towards her. He had never even spoken to her loudly like this before. But now, he had completely lost his previous obedience and Xun'er couldn't accept it. Ding. Xun'er generated fear, emotional value plus 100. But even so, I have never done anything to betray you. Xun'er lowered her head, not daring to look into Gu Fei's eyes, her voice no longer as confident as before, but rather with a hint of fragility. Is that so? As your husband, I invited you out several times, but you always refused with various excuses like cultivating. And your so-called brother Xiao Yan, before he even said a word, you were eager to go on a date with him, and even wanted to hide it from everyone. Isn't that having a guilty conscience? Gu Fei's lips curved into a smile that was even somewhat elegant and indifferent. There was no sarcasm, no disdain, just a calm, nonchalant calm. Looking at Gu Fei's calm expression, Xun'er felt a surge of panic in her heart. She knew that Gu Fei might really not care about her anymore. Moreover, Gu Fei's words made Xun'er feel a sense of shame. As a wife, she indeed had not fulfilled her duties. And as a married woman, maintaining distance from other men was also an unspoken rule. Ding. Xun'er generated guilt and panic, emotional value plus 200. Gu Fei, it's not what you think, You just never cared about me, your husband. No matter how good I was to you, I could never compare to your old flame. No, it's not true, I did not care about you. At this point, even Xun'er herself couldn't continue. Some facts she herself had to admit. Gu Fei, unless he was blind, could see all her actions. It's just that our marriage to you is simply not important. All my kindness to you is just cheap. How could it compare to the beauty between you and your old flame? Gu Fei spoke again, softly. His voice had long lost its usual warmth, as calm as a stranger's. This caused panic in Xun'er's heart. Whether before marriage or during the half-year after marriage, Gu Fei had always been very good. Moreover, Gu Fei was indeed very outstanding, a favored son of heaven in this world. At this point, Xun'er would absolutely not consider divorcing Gu Fei. That would have too great an impact on her. Also, I am your husband now. You are so good to other men, giving them due techniques, giving them subfires, and even going to secretly meet him. Meeting secretly, hiding it from everyone. Are you planning to sleep with him next? We have been married for half a year, and you have never consummated our marriage with me. Are you planning to preserve your chastity for another man? Gu Fei's gaze towards Xun'er once again became somewhat disdainful. No, Xun'er panicked and instantly cried out. Looking at Gu Fei's eyes, she almost broke down. Who could bear to be so despised by their own husband? Ding. Xun'er generated collapse, critical hit, emotional value plus 1,000. Gu Fei, it's not what you think. Not consummating our marriage is just because I'm not ready yet. Xun'er explained anxiously. Not ready. What does it mean to be ready? Are you planning to save your chastity for your old flame? Is that your preparation? A hint of disgust appeared in Gu Fei's eyes. Nonsense, I didn't. Xun'er was clearly provoked by Gu Fei's words and cried out in surprise. Gu Fei, how can you say that about me? Am I such a wanton and filthy woman in your eyes? Xun'er stared at Gu Fei for a long while, 2 lines of clear tears silently streaming down. She angrily questioned Gu Fei. Ding, Xun'er generated anger emotional value plus 100. Xun'er was already beautiful, and at this moment, with 2 lines of clear tears tracing her cheeks, she exuded an even more poignant beauty. Most men, seeing this scene, would feel a stir of pity. However, the current Gu Fei had no trace of affection, remaining indifferent. Otherwise, do you think that you can put all your thoughts on another man and still expect me to treat you as pure and untainted? Gu Fei spoke with contempt. She did something filthy, yet she wouldn't let others speak of it. How could such a thing exist under heaven? Hearing Gu Fei's words, Xun'er's initial anger gradually dissipated, replaced by a hint of shame. She understood that, in this matter, she was indeed wrong. Ding, Xun'er generated shame, emotional value plus 100. Gu Fei didn't speak, sitting quietly in the chair. A moment later, Xun'er slowly recovered, looking at Gu Fei but not daring to meet his gaze. At this moment, she gritted her teeth and said, I just wanted to help him. I didn't do anything to betray you. Ding, Xun'er generated shame, emotional value plus 100. That person enjoys treatment that I, your husband, have never had. Do you think that as long as you haven't slept with him, it doesn't count as cheating? Since you're so eager to see him, why don't you bring him to the ancient world to replace my position? Gu Fei continued to mock. You, Gu Fei, don't speak so filthily. I just treat him as a relative. Gu Fei's words were extremely explicit, and Xun'er, in her extreme shame, once again showed a hint of anger. Am I speaking filthily? Then you yourself have done it. Isn't that even filthier? Gu Fei retorted. This retort left Xun'er speechless. What, did I hit the mark? Are you anxious? Gu Fei looked at the stunned Xun'er and continued to taunt her. Xun'er lowered her head, feeling some panic and shame. Ding, Xun'er generated panic and shame, emotional value plus 100. Xun'er, I admit I liked you very much before. For you, I almost lost myself. I tried my best to give you the best. I would never refuse anything you wanted. It's just that you always took it for granted. I thought that all this was just temporary, that as long as I kept being good to you, one day you would give your heart to me. Now, I finally know that you have another man in your heart. Since your heart isn't here, and your body isn't willing to give, you naturally no longer have the qualifications to make me give without anything in return. Gu Fei's gaze was cold and remote, his voice stern and sharp. As these words fell, the shame in Xun'er's heart grew even stronger, leaving her speechless. Ding, Xun'er generated extreme shame, emotional value plus 300. Chapter 3, Rank 7 Alchemy. What place do I, your husband, hold in your heart? We are already married, yet you cannot restrain your own heart. Gu Fei's voice was low and grim. Xun'er looked up, staring at the indifferent Gu Fei. She wanted to explain, but she couldn't find the words. In many ways, Gu Fei was right. Since she was married, she should have naturally kept her distance from other men. However, she had been far too willful, never considering Gu Fei's feelings at all. Or rather, it wasn't that she hadn't considered them. It was that she had never cared. Ding. Xun'er is experiencing panic and emotional collapse. Emotion points plus 300. Enough. There's no need to say more. Let's just get a divorce. Since you are unwilling to give your body to me, I will set you free. Gu Fei looked at Xun'er calmly, his voice devoid of any emotion. I. Xun'er opened her mouth, almost blurting out, I can give my body to you. But the words died in her throat for certain reasons. Am I really so unworthy of your trust? Seeing Gu Fei's look of determination, Xun'er's face turned pale and her heart ached ding. Xun'er is experiencing sadness, pain, and shame. Emotion points plus 300. What part of you is worthy of my trust? Gu Fei countered. I. Xun'er's mind seemed to short-circuit, unable to form a complete sentence for a long time. Fine, let's part on good terms and not embarrass each other. I'll move out tonight. Gu Fei had no desire to entangle himself with Xun'er any further. Leaving those words behind, he turned to walk downstairs. This residence belonged to Xun'er. Previously, Gu Fei had deferred to Xun'er in everything. Thus, even after they married, when Xun'er said she wanted to stay in her own residence, Gu Fei had agreed without hesitation. Now that things had reached this point, there was naturally no reason for Gu Fei to stay. No, you are my husband, you can't leave me. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Xun'er quickly turned and spoke stubbornly to Gu Fei. Since you won't let me go, let me ask you, will you consummate our marriage tonight? Hearing Xun'er's words, Gu Fei frowned, his eyes filled with an indescribable disgust as he asked one last time. Xun'er was speechless. She had thought about this before. It was just that she wasn't ready yet. Enough. Tomorrow morning, I will go to the clan chief and explain the situation. This time, Gu Fei's steps out of the bamboo building were firm. No matter how much Xun'er tried to make him stay, he didn't stop for a single step. By now, it was late, and night had blanketed the land. Cool moonlight poured down from the sky, draping the entire mountain range in a faint silver veil. In the center of the mountain range, clusters of palaces rose and fell in succession. Under the moonlight, they looked like ancient beasts, exuding a hint of primordial aura. Meanwhile, Gu Fei stood alone on a peak far away from those ancient palaces. At this moment, the surroundings were exceptionally quiet, as tranquil as Gu Fei's heart. From now on, I will never waste all my energy trying to please Xun'er again. Gu Fei let out a long breath, feeling a sense of relief and comfort. This peak held his residence from before the marriage. Speaking of which, he hadn't been here for half a year. As he walked slowly toward his residence, Gu Fei began to contemplate his plans for the future. This was the Fighting Qi Continent, where the ultimate lifelong wish of countless people was to become a legendary Dou Emperor. Gu Fei was no exception. 10 years ago, Gu Fei had activated the emotion upgrade system, which allowed him to advance from a person of ordinary talent to a current prodigy of the Gu clan. Emotion upgrade system. The system's function was simple. Gu Fei could collect emotion points by directly or indirectly stimulating emotional fluctuations in people with high luck. Handled in S52, these emotion points could then be used to upgrade his various abilities. In this world, almost everyone with great luck was someone around Xiao Yan. As the future Flame Emperor, Xiao Yan's luck naturally far exceeded that of ordinary people. Aside from Xiao Yan, most others with great luck were concentrated in the northwest continent. In previous years, Gu Fei's attention had been almost entirely focused on Xun'er. To bring Xun'er back to the Gu clan, he had cultivated extremely hard within the ancient world. Combined with the fact that some in the Gu clan also possessed minor luck, Gu Fei was able to make rapid progress. However, the difference in emotion points gained from stimulating someone with low luck versus high luck was vast. For example, directly or indirectly stimulating an ordinary person might only yield 0.1 or 0.5 emotion points, whereas stimulating someone with high luck like Xun'er could yield several hundred. Therefore, to collect more emotion points, Gu Fei needed to gather the lucky individuals of the Fighting Qi Continent together. Emotion points, 4,000 in the next moment, a panel that only Gu Fei could see appeared before his eyes. Gu Fei remembered that before he proposed the divorce to Xun'er, his emotion points were just over 2,000. Now they had reached 4,000. I've saved up emotion points for so long. It's time to upgrade my attributes. The thought flashed through Gu Fei's mind. The attribute panel instantly appeared before him. Host, Gu Fei age, 16 cultivation. 7-star Du Zong aptitude, level 101, 90 to 100 is 10-star Du Emperor bloodline aptitude, physique, level 78, comparable to the physique of a late-stage rank 7 Emperor grade bloodline demonic beast, soul. Spiritual realm early-stage cultivation technique, Great Flame Heart Sutra, Heaven rank elementary, Do techniques. Flame Devouring Cage, Earth rank advanced, Sun Finger, Earth rank intermediate, Heavenly Star Steps, Earth rank advanced movement Do skill. Alchemy, rank 6, the system panel was very concise and Gu Fei was very familiar with it. System, upgrade alchemy. Gu Fei issued a command to the system, ding, host's current alchemy rank is 6. Upgrading to rank 7 requires 3,999 emotion points. Beginning upgrade now, buzz. In the next instant, a massive amount of information flooded into Gu Fei's mind. Knowledge regarding alchemy took root and stabilized within his brain. The study of alchemy was vast and profound. Even what the system had input into his mind was just the tip of the iceberg. Gu Fei carefully browsed the alchemical knowledge in his head, completely immersed in it. He naturally knew how difficult it was to become a top-tier alchemist. But with the system in hand, who could say he wouldn't become an alchemist who could stir the winds and clouds of the entire continent in the future? He was completely absorbed in the system panel. Furthermore, since he was currently on the peak where his residence was located, Gu Fei didn't pay attention to the outside world. Not far away, a beautiful Gu clan girl stood there, quietly watching Gu Fei. Chapter 4. Great Brother Gu Fei is getting a divorce. This woman's name is Gu Yunyu, and her strength was considered excellent even within the entire Gu clan. With her attractive looks and decent strength, Gu Yunyu also had many suitors. Although she couldn't compare to Xun'er, ever since Xun'er left, Gu Yunyu could be considered a minor goddess among the younger generation. Yet, she had always secretly loved Gu Fei, the top person of the younger generation in the Gu clan. She had given her heart to Gu Fei long ago, but she never expected that the first request Gu Fei made to the clan chief was to marry Xun'er. Every night, Gu Yunyu couldn't understand what made her inferior to Xun'er. Xun'er had left the Gu clan very early, so Gu Yunyu had practically grown up with Gu Fei. Could the bond of growing up together not even compare to Xun'er? But even so, after Gu Fei married Xun'er, Gu Yunyu would still come here every night to look at objects and think of him. Gu Fei was so excellent, she naturally couldn't let go. Seeing Gu Fei again today, it seemed his strength had increased once more. She had long been unable to discern his strength and future. Gu Fei was seriously examining the system panel, while Gu Yunyu propped her chin and secretly watched him, momentarily lost in thought. A blush spread across her face, and her kai was unstable. Gu Fei quickly sensed the fluctuation not far away. Who? Gu Fei looked over vigilantly and discovered it was the childhood friend, Gu Yunyu. Startled by Gu Fei's gaze, Gu Yunyu was afraid Gu Fei would discover that she had been secretly watching him all these days. Gu Yunyu experienced panic, emotion value +3 in her panic. To cover her embarrassment, she spoke first. Brother Gu Fei, why aren't you with Xun'er accompanying her? She felt a little uneasy in her heart, but she saw that Gu Fei seemed to have completely changed, his eyes indifferent. In the past, whenever he heard Xun'er's name, Gu Fei would smile, and his eyes would soften a bit. Now, he seemed as if it had nothing to do with him, as if he had heard the name of a stranger. I don't need to accompany Xun'er anymore. You don't need to accompany her. An unusual emotion involuntarily surged in Gu Yunyu's heart. She realized something and subconsciously pressed further. Yes, no more. Xun'er and I are preparing for a divorce. Gu Fei met Gu Yunyu's eyes, but he saw an emotion of anticipation welling up in her eyes. Gu Yunyu experienced anticipation, emotion value +5. The system prompted him at the opportune moment. Gu Fei looked at Gu Yunyu's flushed face, and his heart understood something. Could it be that this girl was hoping for his divorce? Could it be that she liked him? Gu Fei was about to speak when he was interrupted by a female voice he knew all too well. I won't divorce him. Gu Fei and Gu Yunyu looked together towards the source of the voice. It turned out that, at this very moment, Xun'er had arrived at Gu Fei's location. Xun'er experienced anger, emotion value plus 100. She looked furious, her gaze unfriendly as she stared at Gu Yunyu. Gu Yunyu took a step back, looking somewhat helplessly at Gu Fei. Xun'er saw her subconscious reaction of seeking help and was about to speak. Why are you still here? Gu Fei's eyes were filled with disappointment and anger. He reprimanded, You have someone else in your heart. Do you still want to disgust me? Upon hearing this, Xun'er bit her lower lip with her pearly teeth, looking at him with some nervousness. Of course, she couldn't deny that she had done wrong. However, Gu Fei shouldn't be here with Gu Yunyu. Then what are you and Gu Yunyu doing here? If I hadn't come, would you have been preparing to marry her? Flames of anger flashed in Xun'er's beautiful eyes, her heart filled with dissatisfaction stirred by her own assumptions. Even if she cared deeply for brother Xiao Yan, she would not allow Gu Fei to care for Gu Yunyu. Xun'er experienced anger, emotion value plus 100. Xun'er glared at Gu Fei, simply speaking out everything she was thinking. It couldn't be that you want to divorce me just for her, right? Gu Fei looked at her with disappointment, unconsciously letting out a sigh. Xun'er was still so beautiful, full of grace, but she was no longer the same as that little girl from before. Xun'er, why would you think that? This girl and I grew up together. It's normal for me to care for her as an older brother. Aren't you the one who knows best the reason I want a divorce? Xun'er's eyes were red, but she still stubbornly met Gu Fei's gaze. Girls are observant. She had naturally realized long ago that Gu Yunyu liked Gu Fei. It was fine when Gu Fei had always kept his distance from other women. But Gu Fei was her husband now. Even if she didn't like Gu Fei, she wouldn't allow Gu Yunyu to covet him. Are you really going to divorce me? Otherwise, what? Wear that green hat, watching you give everything I gave you to him. Xun'er's eyes flickered, but she was unwilling to be at a disadvantage in front of Gu Yunyu. Xun'er experienced shame. Emotion value plus 80. Gu Yunyu stood not far behind Gu Fei, silently listening to their conversation. She was also curious why Gu Fei suddenly wanted to propose a divorce. Listening to Gu Fei's heavy words, Gu Yunyu discerned some of the reasons. Could it be that Xun'er had another man in her heart? Gu Fei did not wish to say more. He frowned slightly, looking at the boundless night. You too, it's late. Please return, I need to rest. Incredulity flashed in Xun'er's eyes. He actually wanted to send her away. But Gu Fei's attitude was firm, so she had no choice but to descend the peak with Gu Yunyu. Gu Fei returned to his room. He didn't think any further. After checking his system panel, he cultivated all night. The next morning, Gu Fei went directly to a grand hall deep within the Gu clan. He hadn't slept all night and had already thought clearly about the matter concerning Xun'er. Since half a year of companionship couldn't win back Xun'er's heart, then he might as well let go. So Gu Fei waited in the grand hall for Gu Yuan's arrival. He planned to meet Gu Yuan and propose his divorce. It was he who had proposed marrying Xun'er to Gu Yuan in the first place. He didn't expect that it would also be he who proposed the divorce to Gu Yuan. Gu Fei let out a bitter laugh, then remembered the emotion value he had gained last night, and a hint of relief gradually appeared on his face. Next, Gu Fei waited for a moment in the Gu clan's grand hall. At some unknown point, a figure silently appeared on the main seat of the hall. This figure was around 40 years old, appearing like an ordinary middle-aged man, dressed in simple hemp clothes with a slight smile on his face. This person was none other than the Gu clan chief, Gu Yuan. At this moment, Gu Yuan's gaze, filled with kindness, looked at Gu Fei below. As the clan chief, he was very satisfied with Gu Fei's strength as the leader of the younger generation. As Xun'er's father, his impression of his son-in-law was also very good. Even so, Gu Fei still felt immense pressure. No matter what, standing before him was the Gu clan chief, who was much stronger than his own grandfather. The strength of a 9-star Du Sheng late stage was invincible in this era where no Du emperor appeared. Chapter 5. Is there a cooling-off period for divorce? Why have you come to see me this time? Gu Yuan did not know that Gu Fei had driven Xun'er out of the mountain peak last night. After all, Xun'er herself knew that if this matter became known, she would be embarrassed. Gu Fei understood from Gu Yuan's reaction that he still didn't know. When he first arrived, Gu Fei had originally intended to state it directly. However, Xun'er was Gu Yuan's daughter, and even a tiger would not devour its cub. Even if Gu Yuan, as the clan chief, couldn't openly favor his daughter, there would inevitably be some bias in how he handled it. Xun'er and I have been husband and wife for half a year. Xun'er is a very good person, but Gu Fei thought of Xun'er's actions, and although he had already let it go in his heart, his tone was still somewhat obscure. Perhaps I am not outstanding enough. Xun'er does not have me in her heart. Xun'er and I may not be fated. I am not suitable for her. Gu Fei stopped at that, his gaze turning to Gu Yuan, who had remained silent. Could it be that Gu Fei wants a separation? Gu Yuan feels surprised. Emotion value +5. The surprise in Gu Yuan's eyes was well hidden as he looked down at Gu Fei, who was sitting below him. It was Gu Fei who had come to him, insisting that he wanted to marry Xun'er. Gu Fei was the leader of the younger generation, and he felt that Gu Fei had a lot of potential. Moreover, this child had grown up under his watch, so Gu Yuan had agreed. But how could such a change occur only half a year after their marriage? However, immediately after, Gu Yuan felt a slight anger. If Xun'er were to separate from Gu Fei, even if she had committed no fault, her reputation would likely be greatly affected. Gu Fei silently observed Gu Yuan's reaction. Yet, in the next second, he received a system notification. Gu Yuan feels angry. Emotion value +5. He understood. This was likely him wanting to speak up for his daughter. Gu Yuan would definitely question him next, and Gu Fei also needed to organize his words. The upcoming explanation must be more tactful. Gu Yuan's brows furrowed slightly, and his entire being unconsciously exuded a faint pressure. He did not do this intentionally. It was merely an unconscious action. Just as Gu Yuan was about to ask Gu Fei for the real reason, before he could see anyone, a female voice arrived first. "Father, I will not divorce Gu Fei." Immediately after, Xun'er, who hadn't slept well all night, rushed in, holding up her skirt. Xun'er feels excited. Emotion value +50. Gu Fei, however, hid the smile at the corner of his mouth. His ex-wife, who provided emotion value, had arrived. Gu Yuan looked at her flustered appearance. Then, with both affection and displeasure, he hummed, then told her to sit down. Xun'er hesitated for a moment, choosing to sit opposite Gu Fei. Although she also wanted to sit closer to Gu Fei was not giving her any face now. It was better not to invite trouble for herself. As soon as Xun'er sat down, Gu Yuan straightened up slightly and with some urgency began to ask. "Gu Fei came to me early this morning to discuss something, Xun'er. Tell me, father, has anything happened between you and Gu Fei?" The worry on his face made Xun'er look ashamed and lower her head. Xun'er feels ashamed. Emotion value +50. She kept her head down and refused to answer, so Gu Yuan could only look at Gu Fei, rubbing his forehead helplessly. Gu Fei sighed. He tried to explain as tactfully as possible why he wanted a separation. "Xun'er and I have been married for half a year. I had hoped for a harmonious marriage. But, between us, there has never actually been a marital relationship." His tactful first sentence left Gu Yuan dumbfounded. Gu Yuan had anticipated that Xun'er might not be able to fall in love with Gu Fei right away, but he hadn't expected that they hadn't consummated their marriage in half a year. He had always hoped to have one or two intelligent, adorable, and innocent grandchildren, but that hope had come to naught. Gu Yuan saw that Gu Fei had much more to say and nodded, signaling him to continue. "If it were only this one thing, I naturally wouldn't propose a separation. I wonder if you still remember the Xiao family." Xun'er's expression changed. She was naturally afraid that after Gu Yuan knew about this, he would directly confine her and never allow her to see Xiao Yan again. She was even more afraid that Gu Yuan, to sever her lingering thoughts, would directly send people to deal with Xiao Yan. Xun'er feels nervous. Emotion value +50. Of course I remember. It's the family in Wootton City where I sent Xun'er back then. Gu Yuan replied. What was Gu Fei going to say? A strange look appeared in his eyes. Xiao Yan, the son of the Xiao family's clan chief, was once the genius who dominated Wootton City. He and Xun'er grew up together and got along exceptionally well, so well that even Gu Fei closed his eyes. Even after returning to the Gu family, she still had to send a grand gift to Xiao Yan. Of course, it might just be friendship, but perhaps she was afraid I would get angry if I knew, so she secretly went to see Xiao Yan behind my back. Xun'er feels ashamed. Emotion value plus 100. Xun'er listened with her head down as Gu Fei tactfully recounted her actions to her father. She didn't deny it, but her face was a little red. Gu Yuan feels angry. Emotion value plus 5. Gu Yuan felt angry at Xun'er after hearing this, but he could also understand Gu Fei. As a man himself, if his woman did something like that, he would also be angry, even angry enough to want a separation. However, the one who made the mistake was ultimately Gu Yuan's daughter, so he naturally had a mind to protect her. It's just, I'm sorry to Gu Fei. Gu Yuan sighed inwardly. Xun'er, how could you do such a thing? How could the Xiao family's boy compare to your husband, making you do such a rebellious thing? You have truly disappointed me. Xun'er feels ashamed. Emotion value plus 200. Her father's scolding made Xun'er even more ashamed. Gu Yuan, however, changed his tone. Xun'er must also regret doing this. Why don't you go back and think about it for a while? After all, a good son-in-law like Gu Fei was powerful and good to his wife. He still had to consider Xun'er more. If after a month you are still insistent, then I will agree to your separation, this 1 month's time. Gu Fei's expression was somewhat inexplicably strange. He hadn't expected that even after arriving on the Fighting Qi Continent, there would be a so-called divorce cooling-off period. Gu Fei, of course, was unwilling to agree to such an absurd request. A month, could he really forgive Xun'er for cuckolding him? But he couldn't contradict the current Gu Yuan. Gu Fei's strength had not yet reached the point where he could act recklessly throughout the entire Gu family. Gu Fei could only nod helplessly. Clan chief, then as you say. Gu Yuan nodded with satisfaction, but he was choked by Gu Fei's next sentence. However, I believe that after a month my thoughts will still not change. Gu Yuan was the clan chief, and his words carried great weight. Since he had spoken to postpone Gu Fei and Xun'er's separation, Gu Fei could only temporarily agree. But as for the future, who could say? Chapter 6 Ancient Monster. A waste of the Xiao clan, is he worthy? Gu Fei stood up, bowed respectfully to Gu Yuan, and then left. He didn't spare Xun'er a single extra glance the entire time. Xun'er and Gu Yuan, of course, both noticed this. Xun'er felt a strange emotion welling up in her heart, though she didn't know why. Didn't Gu Fei used to be deeply in love with her? How did he become like this today? She bit her lower lip in displeasure. Seeing Gu Fei leave, Gu Yuan sighed deeply. His daughter was so pampered and lawless. She was already married, yet she was still entangled with other men. Wasn't all of this because Gu Yuan had spoiled Xun'er too much before? Xun'er looked exactly like his wife, and because of this, he unconsciously lowered his bottom line for Xun'er again and again. As he raised her, his charming and lovely daughter committed such unrestrained and lawless acts. For a moment, Gu Yuan didn't know if what he had done was right. His rather shameless response to Gu Fei's request was, of course, eroding Gu Fei's affection for Xun'er. It's all this girl's fault. Xun'er, do you know your mistake? Since you are already married to Gu Fei, you should naturally pay attention to your own behavior. Why would you still secretly meet another man? Besides, in what way is Gu Fei not superior to that Xiao Yan? What's so good about a good-for-nothing? Gu Yuan had sent scouts to investigate the Xiao family a long time ago. He naturally knew that Gu Fei's statement of genius was a lie. Xiao Yan of the Xiao family was clearly a good-for-nothing. The genius Xun'er disliked him, yet she was fond of a good-for-nothing. Gu Yuan's tone was not harsh. It was merely a father's usual guidance and admonition to his daughter. He believed his tone was already gentle enough. However, Xun'er at this moment had a look of grievance. Of course, she still didn't think she was terribly wrong. Father, it's clearly Gu Fei who is making a mountain out of a molehill. Why are you scolding me? Gu Yuan glared at Xun'er, but seeing her beautiful eyes red, his heart softened again. He could only give up helplessly. Gu Yuan waved his hand, sending Xun'er away, and he also had to find a way to persuade Gu Fei. After all, Gu Fei's resolute words before leaving did not seem fake. He really wanted to divorce his former wife. Xun'er turned and left. Gu Yuan sat in thought for a long while, then rose and left the main hall. Next, he planned to go find Gu Fei's grandfather, Gu Lai, to discuss the emotional matters between the two young people. Gu Yuan still hoped that Gu Lai could persuade Gu Fei. Gu Fei greatly respected his grandfather. If Gu Lai spoke, this matter might still have a chance to turn around. On the other side, the news of Gu Fei and Xun'er successively seeking the clan chief quickly spread throughout the vast Gu clan. In addition, Gu Yunyu, who was driven out of the mountain peak with Xun'er by Gu Fei last night, revealed some details this morning. Her beautiful eyes held a hint of excitement, and in just a few words, she hinted at what happened last night. Stopping at that, Gu Yunyu turned and left, but the rumors within the Gu clan intensified. Currently, many people within the Gu clan already knew that the relationship between Gu Fei and Xun'er had become somewhat strained. Gu Fei's marriage to Xun'er had already caused much discussion throughout the Gu clan. Xun'er was the goddess of the younger generation, and Gu Fei was the most powerful individual among the younger generation. Their union naturally sparked discussion. Now, after only half a year, their marital relationship had developed cracks again. Naturally, this led to another round of controversy. After Gu Fei left the main hall, he prepared to return to his residence. His cultivation was profound, so he naturally noticed many people whispering in his direction. Their eyes were all on Gu Fei, but Gu Fei walked towards his residence with an unchanged expression. Perhaps the matter had already spread. Gu Fei shook his head. Whatever negative impact his matter spreading might cause, it had nothing to do with him. The group of followers who usually flattered Gu Fei were now standing far away from him. They hid in corners, whispering, and from time to time, gazes of doubt, excitement, and resentment fell upon Gu Fei. And Gu Fei, of course, was enjoying this kind of attention. No, he was enjoying the emotional value brought by these rich emotions. Gu Yu generates curiosity. Emotional value plus 1 Gu Fei Yang generates resentment. Emotional value plus 1 Gu Yao generates anger. Emotional value plus 5, although there were no people of luck here. The emotional value brought was merely a drop in the bucket. But mosquito meat is still meat. He naturally wouldn't disdain it. However, the last burst of anger from someone named Gu Yao caught his attention. Among the gossiping crowd, a man named Gu Yao had anger in his eyes. That anger was caused by Gu Fei, but it wasn't directed at him. Gu Yao had once liked Xun'er, because Xun'er was the goddess of the entire Gu clan's younger generation, so he naturally liked her. However, after Xun'er returned and married Gu Fei, Gu Yao could only give up. He considered himself to uphold the Tao of a gentleman, and naturally would not commit the evil act of stealing another's wife. Moreover, Gu Yao was also genuinely impressed by Gu Fei. But where did that good-for-nothing named Xiao Yan come from? Why was Gu Yao so angry, and how did he know about Xiao Yan? It turned out that Gu Yao had just learned this morning from Gu Ling, who had gone to pick up Xun'er initially. The reason for Xun'er's recent discord and strained relationship with Gu Fei. It was very likely due to a good-for-nothing named Xiao Yan from the northwest continent. Xiao Yan was a man, and since Xun'er had fallen out with Gu Fei because of him, that could only mean that Xun'er might have developed feelings for Xiao Yan. Gu Yao was extremely intelligent. With Gu Ling's simple hint, he understood the whole story. He was able to back down initially because Gu Fei was outstanding enough to be Xun'er's husband. But what right did a good-for-nothing like Xiao Yan have? Thus, Gu Yao could not suppress the anger in his heart. He had, astonishingly, developed a murderous intent towards that Xiao Yan. Gu Yao sat by the bed, looking at the distant scenery, his sinister eyes filled with towering murderous intent. Such a good-for-nothing, to actually capture Xun'er's heart more than I or brother Gu Fei did. He simply deserves to die. Gu Yao's eyes were full of gloom, and seeing Gu Fei pass by the window, he found it even harder to suppress the anger in his heart. He unconsciously transferred his angry emotions to Gu Fei. Gu Fei's system faithfully reminded him, and he looked over as if sensing something. He met the gloomy gaze of Gu Yao by the bed. Gu Fei calmly met his gaze, smiled faintly, and continued walking towards the mountain peak. Gu Yao watched Gu Fei's calm and composed demeanor, and the murderous intent in his heart towards Xiao Yan became even more overwhelming. Such an excellent man was actually inferior to a good-for-nothing in Xun'er's heart. It seemed that this Xiao Yan absolutely could not be allowed to live long. As soon as this thought was born in his mind, Gu Yao made up his decision. He decided to act immediately. Gu Yao was originally a decisive person, and now Xiao Yan just happened to run into his crosshairs. He was just a good-for-nothing. He could kill him if he wanted to. Although he was not a person who killed indiscriminately, who told Xiao Yan to covet someone he might never be worthy of in his entire life. If Clan Chief Gu Yuan hadn't sent Xun'er to that impoverished place before, that good-for-nothing would never have even dreamed of seeing Xun'er. Chapter 7, The Seventh Grade Alchemist, the most shining alchemy genius of the ancient clan. Gu Yao pondered for a moment, then summoned one of his trusted subordinates. Immediately head to the northwest continent. The subordinate looked up at him with a hint of confusion, only to see a strong, murderous intent brewing in Gu Yao's eyes. Find Xiao Yan and eliminate that good-for-nothing. The subordinate was so frightened by his powerful aura and gloomy gaze that cold sweat broke out on his back, and he quickly bowed his head in affirmation. On this side, assassins targeting Xiao Yan had already been dispatched. On the other side, Gu Fei returned to the mountain peak. After he returned to his residence, he sat down and rested for a moment. Then he decided to begin refining a grade 7 pill. A grade 7 pill. If it were placed in the outside world, such a genius would scare a group of people. How young Gu Fei was. He was only 16 years old. Yet he could refine a grade 7 pill that many alchemists could not refine in their entire lives. Any one of these grade 7 pills could fetch a sky-high price at an auction. Many grade 7 pills were already priceless treasures, and even one released could stir up a storm of blood and gore. Previously, the system had upgraded Gu Fei's alchemy to level 7. Naturally, Gu Fei also mastered a large number of grade 7 pill formulas. Gu Fei had not slept last night, and his thoughts were not only about Xun'er's marriage. More of his thoughts were on this grade 7 pill. Since he had already mastered a large number of pill formulas, he naturally had to start attempting to refine them. The medicinal pill Gu Fei was going to refine this time was one that could increase a 1-star cultivation at the Du Zong stage. It was called the Tihai pill. It was a priceless grade 7 pill on the market. After all, the advantage of the Tihai pill was that, after taking it, it could not only increase a 1-star cultivation at the Du Zong stage, but most importantly, it had no side effects whatsoever. There would be no unstable foundation, and relying on a single medicinal pill could directly increase a Du Zong expert's cultivation by 1 star. Even for a 7th grade alchemist, refining this grade 7 pill would take a lot of time, and there was even a possibility of failure. Why did Gu Fei want to try refining a grade 7 pill? He recalled the pill formulas provided by the system in his mind and murmured to himself, "It's just to pass the time." Yes, a grade 7 pill that ordinary 7th grade alchemists would spend weeks or even a month preparing before daring to refine. Part of the reason Gu Fei was refining this medicinal pill was to pass the time. The divorce cooling-off period was exactly 1 month, and perhaps by the time the medicinal pill was released, the time would have arrived. Once preparations were complete, Gu Fei set up a restriction outside the house. He did not want any unnecessary people to disturb him at a critical juncture. Delaying the alchemy would not be good. Days passed, and the two protagonists never appeared in the Gu clan. Discussions about Gu Fei and Xun'er also gradually died down. After all, they needed to see the protagonists to have gossip desires. Now that both of them were gone, who knew what they were doing? Moreover, daily cultivation was very busy. Above the mountain peak, Gu Fei sat cross-legged by the window, his eyes quietly closed in front of him. The small and exquisite pill furnace emitted a faint glow. A faint medicinal fragrance lingered in the room, seemingly there, and yet not. It wasn't until half a month later that Gu Fei suddenly opened his eyes. The sky above the mountain peak, where he was, had already changed dramatically. Outside the mountain peak, there were no clouds for thousands of miles and the sun shone brightly. Above the mountain peak, however, dark clouds gathered. Amidst them, raging pill lightning was intertwined. The pill lightning was incredibly thick, making people feel a chill of fear after seeing it. The pill lightning first rapidly gathered in the clouds, then quickly struck down like lightning. It hit the house on the mountaintop squarely. The sound and impact startled many people from the surrounding Gu clan. They all ran to watch. Among them were several alchemists. An alchemist, who had considerable prestige among the younger generation, looked at the pill lightning in the sky and was completely stunned. He gasped in disbelief. This must be the pill lightning that appears when a grade 7 pill is born. Although there were only a few alchemists among the surrounding people, they all understood how precious a grade 7 pill was. A young girl spoke up in admiration, her face filled with longing for a strong person. I never thought Big Brother Gu Fei's cultivation progress would far exceed ordinary people's, and his alchemy attainments are also extremely high. Yes, Brother Gu Fei is only 16 years old. Young Miss Xun'er really shouldn't have. A more respected person from the Gu clan said, with a hint of regret in his eyes. After all, young Miss Xun'er was also a person of extremely high talent, and her union with Gu Fei would undoubtedly elevate the Gu clan to a higher level. However, young Miss Xun'er had another man in her heart. The surrounding discussions were numerous, mostly with tones of admiration, and all these emotions of admiration, envy, etc., arising from many people's hearts towards Gu Fei, all flowed into the system. Gu Tian generates admiration, emotion value +1. Gu Yan generates admiration, emotion value +1. Gu Yakin generates affection, emotion value +1. These dense emotion values were all collected by the system. Gu Fei listened with satisfaction as emotion values of 1 point each were credited. Although small, a trickle can form a mighty river, can't it? And the last notification made the corners of his mouth curl up. Xun'er generates depression, emotion value +100. It turned out that Xun'er had also come and was currently among the surrounding Gu clan members. Of course, no one there had yet discovered Xun'er's arrival. Only Gu Fei's system exposed her. At this moment, Xun'er was hiding in the dark, looking up at the house on the mountaintop, just like the people around her. She couldn't help but recall that she had lived there just a few days ago. If Gu Fei hadn't proposed divorce, wouldn't she also be one of the objects of everyone's envy at this moment? Instead of being pitied by everyone, pitied that she shouldn't have chosen another man. Xun'er heard all the discussions around her. Her cultivation was already profound. The noisy discussions were like knives and swords, piercing her ears and her heart. Originally, shouldn't she not care about anything concerning Gu Fei? Why, upon hearing these people's discussions, did a feeling of depression well up in her heart? Xun'er felt very uncomfortable. Biting her lower lip lightly with her pearly teeth, she frowned and looked up at the distant mountaintop. Xun'er's eyes were vacant, lost in thought. Although Xun'er disliked Gu Fei, her appreciation for strong people in her heart still drew her here. Because Xun'er had long sensed an anomaly in this area, like the pressure of an advanced medicinal pill about to be born, she rushed over, planning to join the excitement. After all, her father, Gu Yuan, was truly angry at the time, even announcing that he would confine her for a month. Only when Gu Fei came to find her father again would Xun'er be allowed to move freely. Deep down, Xun'er unconsciously blamed Gu Fei. Half a month passed, and she sensed that an advanced medicinal pill was about to be born here, so she secretly slipped out while Gu Yuan wasn't paying attention. On the way, Xun'er was still excited, thinking that an elder expert of the Gu clan had refined an advanced medicinal pill again. Who would have thought that the one who refined the grade 7 pill was actually Gu Fei? Chapter 8, Xun'er's Questioning. Xun'er watched with a heavy heart as a grade 7 pill was produced from Gu Fei's hands. She thought for a moment and decided to temporarily put aside what happened yesterday. After all, the yearning for strength is something every person of the Gu family must possess. Although she didn't like Gu Fei, it wouldn't be a problem to congratulate him on refining a grade 7 pill, right? She successfully convinced herself to go see Gu Fei. pushing the unpleasant discussions she had just overheard to the back of her mind. Xun'er was just about to go congratulate Gu Fei and explain the previous incident. She still wanted to mend her relationship with Gu Fei. After all, with a genius like Gu Fei as her husband, she would also have face. At this moment, Xun'er couldn't recall why Gu Fei had proposed a divorce. She still felt that Gu Fei was making too much of a fuss. Was it really necessary to propose a divorce over such a small matter? Xun'er still stubbornly believed that as long as she took a step back, Gu Fei would forgive her. After all, Gu Fei used to like her so much. His first request to Gu Yuan was to marry her. Gu Fei loved her, didn't he? Who knew the next second, Xun'er's steps halted in place. She had already walked to the foot of the mountain and was about to step upwards. A servant came over to stop her. Apologies, young Miss Xun'er. The master has already issued an eviction order, forbidding anyone from disturbing him. The servant's tone was indifferent, carrying an obvious politeness. It hardly sounded like he was speaking to the wife of this peak's master. Xun'er's beautiful eyes widened, filled with anger. These servants had never called her young Miss Xun'er before, and their attitude had never been so distant in the past. Even if Gu Fei was cultivating and issued an eviction order, they would never stop her. She had always had free access to this peak. This was a promise Gu Fei had made when he married her. This Kai-rich peak would never block Xun'er. Seeing this, Xun'er still wanted to speak, but the servant cut her off. The master has decided to immediately begin refining the next medicinal pill, and cannot be disturbed by anyone. Even a genius like Xun'er couldn't help but be a little shocked after hearing the servant's words, to refine another one. Moreover, judging by Gu Fei's level of importance, it was very likely another advanced medicinal pill. Xun'er couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Is Gu Fei a monster or something? An ordinary 7th grade alchemist would be completely drained of Kai after refining one grade 7 pill. They would need to rest for several days, or even more than 10 days to recover. After all, refining a grade 7 pill not only requires immense Kai, but also consumes a lot of mental energy. Many people even damage their origin while refining grade 7 pills, making it difficult to improve their strength for the rest of their lives. Gu Fei had just refined one grade 7 pill and was immediately going to refine another. Does he not need to rest at all? He's truly a prodigy. With the servant's words, Xun'er could only give up. She stamped her foot and walked away resentfully. All of this was observed by one person. Everything can only depend on fate. That person sighed in his heart, revealing a weathered, calm face. Although he appeared quite ordinary at first glance, the occasional glint in his eyes made it impossible to ignore his presence. The top figure of the Gu family, Black Annihilation King Gu Lai, was looking down from a high vantage point. Gu Lai had been watching the two young people's conflict for a long time. He smiled helplessly and let out a long sigh. Gu Yuan had come to Gu Lai that day to discuss this matter. Gu Yuan, with a hint of embarrassment, laid out the situation to Gu Lai, subtly asking him to persuade Gu Fei. Initially, upon hearing about this, Gu Lai was naturally displeased. After Gu Yuan left, he snorted coldly. His grandson had been cuckolded by his granddaughter-in-law, and Gu Yuan still wanted him to persuade Gu Fei to forgive Xun'er. How absurd. Moreover, Gu Fei was no ordinary person. Why should he repeatedly back down? However, since the clan chief had so earnestly asked him to persuade Gu Fei, Gu Lai had no choice but to agree on the surface. But what could he do about Gu Fei? Gu Lai understood his grandson's personality very well. He was a man of his own mind. Even if Gu Lai used his identity as a grandfather to pressure him, if he didn't want to do something, he simply wouldn't. Therefore, Gu Lai had no confidence in being able to persuade Gu Fei. Moreover, personally, he didn't want his proud grandson to suffer such a grievance. It was just a woman. There were so many more in the world. Why should Gu Fei cling to this one tree? Much more time passed. People of the Gu family came to Gu Fei Peak in an endless stream every day. They looked up, their hearts filled with admiration. Emotional value slowly entered the system, and finally, the 2nd grade 7 pill was born. Familiar dark clouds and pill lightning once again gathered over the peak. Around Gu Fei's peak, Countless people of the Gu family gathered again to watch. The pill lightning struck down in waves, its terrifying pressure extending for hundreds of miles. Many people below had pale faces, unable to resist this pressure. Some people began to worry if something would happen to Gu Fei. After all, he had refined 2 grade 7 pills consecutively without interruption, then endured 2 rounds of pill lightning. Is there a need to worry about this? Who is brother Gu Fei? Mere pill lightning is nothing to mention. Exactly. Instead of worrying about brother Gu Fei, why not think about how to improve your own alchemy skills? Friendly laughter came from the people around, and that person also blushed and scratched his head. He secretly decided that next time he would ask brother Gu Fei for guidance. A 16-year-old alchemy genius. He feared that even if he diligently cultivated his entire life, he wouldn't be able to catch up. And just at this moment, Xun'er angrily arrived. She stood at the foot of the mountain, her almond-shaped eyebrows raised in anger, her eyes full of fury. Xun'er generated angry emotions. Emotional value plus 200. Gu Fei frowned, opening his eyes to look down the mountain. Looking down from the mountain, there was a small figure. That figure's Kai sank into her dantian, her voice carrying a clear anger. She imbued her voice with Kai, allowing it to spread so that Gu Fei on the peak could hear it clearly. Gu Fei, I never thought you were this kind of person, actually sending people to kill brother Xiao Yan. The surroundings erupted in an uproar. Those who knew the inside story were somewhat disbelieving of Xun'er's words, while others pondered in secret, a little hesitant. Xiao Yan was clearly the son of the Xiao family clan chief in Wutan City, and Xun'er's former beloved. Could it be that Gu Fei, betrayed by his wife, was driven by love, hate, and jealousy to harm Xiao Yan or even to kill that adulterer? But when someone tentatively put forward this idea, it was drowned out by a wave of opposition. How is that possible? That's brother Gu Fei. Exactly. Would he harm an ordinary person because of Xun'er? Moreover, brother Gu Fei clearly no longer likes Xun'er, and he's not a person who kills indiscriminately. Those who knew the inside story here didn't believe Xun'er's one-sided account, and those who didn't know naturally believed it even less. They had observed what kind of person Gu Fei was in their daily lives. Chapter 9. The Truth is Revealed. Gu Fei was benevolent and modest, and when facing Xun'er, he loved her to the core. Although Gu Fei would be hurt if Xun'er harmed him, he would never do anything to kill Xiao Yan. Some kind-hearted people of the Gu family went to persuade Xun'er. Young Miss Xun'er, is there a mistake? Yes, how could brother Gu Fei want to harm anyone? Seeing that everyone around her was defending Gu Fei, Xun'er stamped her foot in anger, her eyes red. None of you believe me. Gu Fei is clearly jealous of Xiao Yan. That's why he wants to destroy him. Xun'er was so angry that she spoke carelessly. As soon as she spoke, she regretted it. What Xun'er wanted to say was clearly not that. Xun'er produced regretful emotions, emotional value plus 100, but regret was useless. Her words were like spilled water, impossible to take back once uttered. Xun'er's voice was not loud, but the accompanying Dou Qi allowed Gu Fei on top of the peak to hear it clearly. Faced with Xun'er's questioning and unreasonable behavior, even Gu Fei, with his good temper, was somewhat annoyed. However, this only further solidified his idea of divorce. Today, Xun'er could question him for a groundless accusation. Tomorrow, would she openly bring Xiao Yan to his peak? Gu Fei sneered and casually glanced down the mountain. He closed the window, ignoring the furious Xun'er. Gu Fei disdained to explain anything. To condemn a man, one can always trump up a charge. He had never done such a thing, but since Xun'er believed he had, then so be it. Let Xun'er be the one who was making a fuss. It was just a bit too noisy. Gu Fei helplessly massaged his forehead and once again set up a formation around his room. Silence finally returned to the room. The faint scent of medicinal pills lingered in Gu Fei's nostrils. He picked up a small medicinal pill and examined it. Then, a faint smile appeared on his face. He had succeeded again. Here, Gu Fei was engrossed in refining medicinal pills, while on the other side, Gu Yuan had already learned of the absurd events that had occurred today at the foot of Gu Fei Peak. Xun'er stood beside Gu Yuan with an unhappy expression, her brows tightly furrowed. She had been grounded by Gu Yuan again, and this time it was a formation personally set up by Gu Yuan. Even if she spent 3 days and 3 nights, she couldn't break it. You should reflect properly. You caused too much trouble today. Xun'er glared at him and pouted. I will personally investigate this matter thoroughly and give you, and Gu Fei, an explanation. After he finished speaking, he left. After a thorough search and investigation, Gu Yuan's findings caused him to frown unconsciously. The results of his investigation showed that Gu Fei had not conversed with anyone else at all. For nearly a month, Gu Fei had completely isolated himself from the outside world in his peak. He had spent an entire month on alchemy, and no one had approached his house during that time. Gu Fei simply could not have arranged for anyone to kill Xiao Yan. This conclusion, verified by multiple sources, was a foregone conclusion. The matter should have ended there, but Xun'er kept making a fuss, demanding an explanation, so Gu Yuan had to continue the investigation. Following the clues, he unexpectedly uncovered someone completely unrelated to the incident. That person was Gu Yao. Gu Yuan sent someone to invite Gu Yao to the main hall for a discussion. Since Gu Yao dared to send his subordinates to assassinate Xiao Yan, he wasn't afraid of being held accountable. Ultimately, it was just a good-for-nothing. Who cared about his life or death? After Gu Yuan sternly questioned Gu Yao did not hesitate and readily admitted to the matter. As expected yet beyond reason, Gu Yuan did not punish him. Who was Gu Yao, and who was Xiao Yan? Xiao Yan was from a declining family. If Xun'er hadn't kept asking, he wouldn't have bothered to investigate. One might ask, when an elephant steps on an ant, who would care? Even if the person sent by Gu Yao had succeeded and killed that Xiao Yan, Gu Yuan, a clan chief of a hidden, powerful clan, a busy and high-ranking figure, would not care. Moreover, Gu Yao told him that Xiao Yan was not dead. His subordinate reported to him that Xiao Yan was only severely injured and missing, seemingly rescued by a mysterious, powerful expert. Upon hearing this, Gu Yuan was somewhat surprised. According to his intelligence, Xiao Yan's current strength was still not enough to impress him. Furthermore, the entire Xiao family, and even the entire Wutan city, had no supreme experts. Which great power was secretly assisting that boy Xiao Yan? However, Gu Yuan quickly dismissed the matter, as he was busy every day. How could he spend too much time and energy on such a trivial matter? His previous actions had already been an exception for Xun'er. Thinking of his wayward daughter, Gu Yuan couldn't help but let out a deep sigh. He also did not notice the unwilling expression on Gu Yao's face. Gu Yao thought Xiao Yan was still that defenseless good-for-nothing. He didn't even think highly of the strongest person in their family. Therefore, Gu Yao became overconfident and only sent low-level Du Zong assassins. Although low-level Du Zongs were inconspicuous in the Gu family, they would completely render the Xiao family helpless. Gu Yao confidently awaited the good news from his subordinates. What he received, however, was the news that Xiao Yan was severely injured and missing, suspected of being rescued by a mysterious, powerful expert. His face contorted in a ferocious expression as he crushed the porcelain cup in his hand, his hatred for this Xiao Yan growing even stronger. The subordinate said that Xiao Yan was completely unable to resist him at the time, on the verge of death. But in the next second, a drastic change occurred. Xiao Yan's aura surged, and the unintentional release of pressure actually made him somewhat fearful. The subordinate instinctively recoiled for a moment, and Xiao Yan was gone. He feared Gu Yao's punishment and searched a 10-mile radius thoroughly. But even digging 3 feet deep, he couldn't find that boy Xiao Yan. After listening, Gu Yao's face was gloomy, his eyes filled with rage and hatred. That good-for-nothing Xiao Yan, if he caught him again, he must kill him to vent his anger. Because of Xiao Yan's unprovoked assassination, Xun'er completely distrusted her husband. She had previously thought about mending her relationship with Gu Fei. Now, however, she completely disregarded any evidence and stubbornly hated Gu Fei. If it weren't for Gu Fei, how could brother Xiao Yan have been severely injured, and how could he have gone missing? Xun'er's beautiful eyes were filled with anger as she looked discontentedly at a house on the peak of that distant mountain. Gu Fei stayed in the house for several days, and after verification, confirmed that the Tihai pill had no problems. He enthusiastically repaired the house, which had become a mess due to the pill lightning. Suddenly, he remembered that he was refining medicinal pills to pass the time, and then he recalled the ridiculous 1-month divorce cooling-off period. More than a month had passed, and it was time to go find Gu Yuan again. Gu Fei didn't believe that after this incident, Gu Yuan would still have the nerve to use the clan chief's authority to pressure him. Chapter 10. Finally divorced. Gu Yuan, this time, was truly ashamed because of Xun'er's unreasonable behavior. He recalled what Xun'er had done, how he had protected Xun'er, and how he had forced Gu Fei to temporarily not divorce, and his scalp tingled. Because of Xun'er, how many mistakes had he made? Gu Yuan shook his head helplessly, no longer able to persuade the two to reconcile. He told Xun'er all the evidence he had personally found, and his conversation with Gu Yao that day. Xun'er's face reddened a bit, realizing that she might have wronged Gu Fei. But she was always stubborn and, of course, couldn't admit her mistake. She just let out a dissatisfied snort and walked away. However, at the entrance of the main hall, she happened to run into Gu Fei, who was rushing over. The former husband and wife, meeting now, one was filled with dissatisfaction, the other completely indifferent. Xun'er stopped, biting her lower lip, wanting to speak. Gu Fei, however, brushed past her without looking back, as if he hadn't seen Xun'er at all. Gu Yuan naturally noticed the movement at the entrance. He sighed and took a sip of tea. Gu Fei stood tall and graceful beneath the main hall, his brows firm and resolute. He didn't say much. Gu Yuan shook his head, lamenting in his heart about Xun'er and his fated separation. He solemnly asked again, "Are you truly going to divorce Xun'er?" Gu Fei nodded, yes. Gu Yuan wanted to make one last effort, so he asked, "No regrets?" Gu Fei pondered for a moment. Xun'er generates anticipation, emotional value plus 50. It turned out that Xun'er, for some reason, despite being ignored by Gu Fei, stubbornly stood at the entrance and hadn't left. Gu Fei had his back to her, falling into a brief silence. Xun'er's heart actually surged with a strange emotion. Could Gu Fei be having second thoughts? She wasn't some plaything to be summoned and dismissed at will, but if Gu Fei wanted to go back on his word, she could reluctantly accept, Xun'er thought, arms crossed, pouting. But then she heard Gu Fei's indifferent words, "No regrets." Subscribe for more amazing novel audiobooks. Don't forget to like, comment, and share Infinite Novel Audio. Xun'er's beautiful eyes widened, looking at Gu Fei's back in disbelief. Gu Yuan was about to speak when Xun'er interrupted him. She rushed forward a few steps, standing in front of Gu Fei. You really want to divorce me?" Only then did Gu Fei grant her his first glance of the day. He looked down at Xun'er, his eyes no longer holding the tenderness and love of the past. Otherwise, Xun'er froze for a moment, tasting the flavor of regret for the first time. Xun'er generates regret, emotional value plus 10. Gu Fei turned to leave, but she grabbed his sleeve. He turned his head without emotion, only to see Xun'er shedding tears in front of him for the first time. She also seemed not to understand where her tears came from, and she vaguely wiped away the tears from the corners of her eyes. A beauty's moist eyes looked at you, the corners of her eyes red. Any man would soften, but Gu Fei didn't. He distantly pulled his sleeve away, politely waiting for Xun'er to speak. I won't see Brother Xiao Yan anymore. Can you not divorce me? Brother Gu Fei. Gu Fei's expression was somewhat subtle. How long had it been since Xun'er called him brother? The long-awaited first time was to beg him not to divorce her. Gu Fei's last shred of affection for Xun'er was crushed by her own hands, completely gone. No, Xun'er, you must understand that this matter never originated with me. Gu Fei turned around and walked unhurriedly towards the door. A sentence came from afar. No need to beg me anymore. Gu Fei's figure was so close to Xun'er, yet she felt she could never grasp him again. Xun'er generates regret. Emotional value plus 200. Xun'er generates sadness. Emotional value plus 200. Xun'er slumped onto the ancient wooden chair, her eyes filled with visible sorrow. Father, did I really make a mistake? Gu Yuan gave her a deep look, then flicked his sleeves and left without a word. And what happened in the main hall today quickly spread. Xun'er's willfulness was scorned by many of the younger generation of the ancient clan, and that deeply affectionate person, who had endured humiliation, was even more pitied by them. Such an excellent man as big brother Gu Fei was actually heartbroken by Xun'er. However, many ancient clan women realized something. Since Gu Fei had already divorced Xun'er, didn't that mean they would have a chance? Which maiden hadn't fantasized about such a handsome and dashing genius in the dead of night? In the following days, whenever Gu Fei left his mountain peak, he would be surrounded by many women. There were the charming granddaughters of elders sending him flowers, and childhood sweethearts who had grown up with him going on outings together. There were even quite a few women slightly older than Gu Fei who came. They found all sorts of reasons to approach Gu Fei. Gu Yan generates admiration. Emotional value plus 1 Gu Ting generates admiration. Emotional value plus 1 emotional values such as these poured in continuously these past few days. There was even one day when Gu Fei was cultivating on the mountain peak, and several old Fojis personally came to visit. Behind them were 2 or 3 petite and exquisite women, shyly hiding. They occasionally peeked out, their eyes sparkling as they looked at him. Even Gu Fei, no matter how oblivious, realized that they were probably trying to arrange a marriage for him. An elder affectionately patted the back of his hand, saying intimate words, yet always praising his granddaughter's exquisite appearance and formidable strength. Gu Fei had never been afraid of anything, but the fervent gazes of these elders and maidens were all focused on him. That burning gaze, as if seeing a rare treasure, made Gu Fei somewhat restless. After finally seeing them off, Gu Fei let out a long sigh. Although they were all well-intentioned, Gu Fei couldn't handle it. So many beauties, weren't they afraid Gu Fei would be overwhelmed? After several days of this ordeal, he understood that these people were all eyeing him as a desirable catch. However, under such an intense siege, Gu Fei had not agreed to anyone from beginning to end. Right now, he only wanted to strive to become stronger. But staying in the ancient world had been too stable. Besides Xun'er, there were no people with high luck to provide emotional value for the system. In other words, it currently seemed difficult for Gu Fei to become stronger in the ancient world. If he wanted to cultivate steadily, he certainly could. The ancient world had abundant cultivation resources, and his grandfather, Gu Lai, was a highly respected figure in the ancient clan. As long as he could wholeheartedly devote himself to arduous cultivation, his future achievements would undoubtedly be significant. However, holding the system and having experienced its power, how could Gu Fei be content to merely remain in such a place and cultivate arduously? He yearned to become strong quickly, to possess power that could rival top experts. This required relying on his opportunities. That is, a system like a deity, omnipotent as long as it had emotional value. After much thought, Gu Fei finally decided to head to the Northwest Continent. Chapter 11. Heading to the Northwest Continent. In the Northwest Continent, there are many people with high luck. If he could stir the emotions of those with luck in the Northwest Continent, Gu Fei narrowed his eyes. That would be much better than staying in the ancient world. Moreover, with his current strength, he was fully capable of establishing himself in the Northwest Continent. The Northwest Continent is barren and resources are scarce, so it is generally difficult for strong cultivators to emerge. Although there are top figures in terms of overall strength, it is completely incomparable to the eastern region. Regardless of Gu Fei's strength, his ability to refine a grade 7 pill alone would make him a respected guest of many large families. After all, a grade 7 pill is not something easily found anywhere in the entire Northwest Continent. Since he decided to leave, Gu Fei had to prepare. He never fought unprepared battles. Although he was confident in his strength, Gu Fei never liked to be overconfident. It was better to make ample preparations. The ancient world has abundant cultivation resources and rare medicinal pills. It would be a pity if Gu Fei didn't use them. With his status and the formidable strength recognized by everyone in the younger generation, many resources would be allocated to Gu Fei during distribution. Not to mention, he also had a grandfather who was the Black Annihilation King. After refining the grade 7 pill last time, there were still many precious medicinal pills left, and Gu Fei collected all of them. He also brought many cultivation resources, all of which he stuffed into his storage ring. These past few days, Gu Fei was somewhat flustered busy gathering resources. After he took a temporary rest, he remembered that he had forgotten to greet his grandfather, Gu Lai. Walking unhurriedly to the door, Gu Fei raised his hand and knocked. A moment later, Gu Lai opened the door and smiled faintly when he saw his grandson, who was rarely seen all day. Although he was Gu Fei's grandfather, his appearance was not very old. On the contrary, Gu Lai had a handsome face and a straight figure, looking to be in his 30s or 40s, with an inconspicuous gleam in his eyes. There were no fluctuations of Qi on Gu Lai's body, but Gu Fei knew that his grandfather, if he didn't make a move, would certainly draw blood when he did. If anyone dared to underestimate him because of his appearance, that person would be finished. "Grandfather, I plan to travel outside for a while. Staying in the ancient world all the time, I can't become stronger." Gu Fei spoke frankly, as Gu Lai understood him best. Gu Lai had learned of the news of Gu Fei and Xun'er's separation early on. Although he didn't deliberately seek out Gu Fei, he knew that his grandson might be in a bad mood now, even if Gu Fei appeared calm and indifferent. But Gu Fei's loving expression when he proposed to Xun'er in the past was clearly remembered by him as his grandfather. At that time, Gu Yuan agreed, and Gu Fei couldn't suppress his smile all day, which Gu Lai teased him about for quite some time. Now, Gu Fei's character had become much more steady, and there were no longer obvious emotional fluctuations. Gu Lai didn't know whether this was good or bad. He only wanted his grandson to be healthy and happy. Gu Fei proactively suggesting he wanted to go out. It was good for him to travel around. Gu Lai was not particularly concerned about whether Gu Fei's strength could improve. In his opinion, his grandson was outstanding enough with extraordinary talent, and his strength would surely reach its peak in the future, so this little time didn't matter. What Gu Lai hoped for was for Gu Fei to be happier. Moreover, Gu Fei had always been a man with his own ideas. Since he had brought it up, Gu Lai naturally agreed with pleasure. He also took out many precious treasures from his personal collection and a large pile of cultivation resources, all of which he gave to Gu Fei. Gu Fei smiled wryly and could only accept everything. After he had packed all his belongings, he simply bid farewell to Gu Lai and discreetly left the ancient world. Gu Fei told no one but Gu Lai. However, he was a prominent figure in the ancient world, and once he was not seen for a few days, some clever people would surely guess that Gu Fei had left the ancient world, but these were all later matters. At this moment, Gu Fei had left the ancient world, entered ancient Saint City, and had already arrived in the eastern region. Ancient Saint City is the passage connecting the ancient world and the outside world. As soon as he stepped out of the space, he felt intense gazes. Ancient Saint City strictly forbids outsiders from entering, and most of those guarding it are strong cultivators from the Gu family. And these strong cultivators all recognized Gu Fei, who was the strongest among the younger generation, but they were well-trained and did not come over to chat. They just stood in place, looking at Gu Fei with eyes full of admiration for a strong cultivator. Gu Fei paused for a moment, then walked towards the city gate of ancient Saint City. The guards at the city gate respectfully greeted him, then stepped aside to let him out. If ancient Saint City was the most famous name in the eastern region, then the ancient world was the supreme overlord of the entire eastern region. The Central Plains eastern region is vast and diverse, and the easiest way to get by here is to have a subordinate force of the Gu family above your head. Within the eastern region, there are even many people who regard members of the Gu family as deities, worshipping them fanatically. This frenzied attitude was astonishing, but it also revealed how lofty the Gu family's status truly was in the eastern region. If Gu Fei chose to develop in the eastern region, he would be like a fish in water, and nothing could be smoother. However, although the eastern region was good, it was not the place Gu Fei wanted to gain experience. He wanted to go to the rather barren northwest continent. Meanwhile, Gu Fei had already embarked on his journey to the northwest continent. However, he received an inexplicable system notification. Xun'er produced regretful emotions, emotion value plus 300. It turned out that, on the other side, the news of Gu Fei leaving the ancient world spread secretly, and when Xun'er learned of this, she felt even more regret. But after this notification, there was no further change. Gu Fei's eyes were indifferent, and he didn't care. In the ancient world, although Xun'er regretted, she seemed to be more concerned about the safety of her brother, Xiao Yan. After all, since Gu Yao sent people to kill Xiao Yan, and he was seriously injured and disappeared, Xun'er had not seen Xiao Yan again. Xun'er convinced herself in her heart that her trip to the northwest continent was to find brother Xiao Yan. It wasn't because Gu Fei had also gone. After convincing herself, she planned to quietly leave the ancient world and go to the northwest continent. In the ancient world, Xun'er's quiet departure that day was seen by many people. Although she wanted to sneak away with her strength, she could avoid being discovered by most people. However, because Xun'er was uneasy and distracted when she was about to leave, some people did discover that she had left the ancient world. Because Gu Fei and Xun'er, the two most talented young people of their generation, left one after another, many people felt a surge of emotion. You say, both big brother Gu Fei and young Miss Xun'er have left the ancient world. Do they want to seek some opportunities? Even a peerless genius like big brother Gu Fei has left. If we want to become stronger, is it better to stay in the ancient world or follow in his footsteps and leave together? The people of the Gu family have always been powerful, but they also admire strength even more. They would try every means to become stronger, but they would not use despicable methods. Chapter 12. First stop, Blackhorn region. Gu Fei and Xun'er, both of them young geniuses of the Gu family, were almost the targets of pursuit for all the young people in the Gu family. Many of the young women who admired Gu Fei, upon hearing that he was leaving, had the idea of following in his footsteps, hoping to win Gu Fei's affection. How wonderful it would be if they could accompany him for a while and make Gu Fei fall in love with them too. For a time, the minds of many young women in the ancient world were stirred, no longer solely immersed in cultivation, but desiring to go to the outside world. However, Gu Yuan and Gu Lai, along with other high-ranking members, looked somewhat serious when they heard about this matter. They were naturally the first to detect Gu Fei and Xun'er's departure. After all, with their strength, not a single rustle of grass in the entire ancient world could escape their notice. Allowing Gu Fei to leave was because he possessed enough strength to protect himself. But now, among all the remaining people in the ancient world, no one could match Gu Fei. Therefore, they worried that these children might encounter accidents outside, which is why they did not want them to leave the ancient world. Moreover, the Gu family people had always believed that within the ancient world, the energy of heaven and earth was abundant, and they had no need to venture outside. A group of high-ranking members gathered in the main hall, discussing matters with clan chief Gu Yuan, who sat at the highest position. Everyone held an opposing view to allowing the younger generation of the Gu family to leave the ancient world. Consequently, when facing the younger generation's desire to go out, some high-ranking members stepped forward and stopped them. At the same time, Gu Yuan officially issued an order that no one else was allowed to leave without permission. Thus, the Gu family returned to its former tranquility, though it was unknown whether this peace would last. On the other side, Gu Fei had been traveling continuously through space wormholes. Because the eastern region was truly far from the northwest continent, even with continuous jumps through space wormholes, it would still take several months. The journey was not smooth sailing and encountered many twists and turns. Gu Fei usually disliked using his Kai to oppress others, nor did he like to let his Kai outwardly manifest. Gu Lai had taught him since childhood to restrain his own Kai, so that others could not clearly perceive his true strength. Gu Lai himself was also like this. On the surface, he appeared like an ordinary person completely without Kai, but anyone who dared to attack him would regret it for life. Gu Lai always believed that there were always people more capable than oneself, and there was always a higher power. Although his strength had reached the peak of the ancient world, no one could claim to be the foremost in the current era. There would always be more formidable individuals. If, by chance, he encountered misfortune, he might be able to snatch a glimmer of hope by deceiving them with his outwardly weak strength. There was a reason for Gu Lai's actions. In his youth, he was sharp and believed himself to be the strongest in the world. His Kai was never restrained, and he never considered that people stronger than him could easily discern his realm. At that time, his mortal enemy, whose strength was inferior to his, went and invited their family's old ancestor. The old ancestor's appearance remained youthful, and the first time Gu Lai met him, he thought this person was young and certainly not as strong as him. So he wantonly used his terrifying aura to suppress him, but was resolved by that person with a light move. Although Gu Lai ultimately survived, he learned to be low-key and reserved. Thus, he began to find ways to prevent his Kai from outwardly manifesting, keeping it contained within his body. He also taught this cultivation method to Gu Fei. Gu Fei was, of course, intelligent and understood with a single hint. Isn't this playing the pig to eat the tiger? Gu Fei realized this and earnestly learned how to restrain his own Kai. Since he learned it, he had never fully released his Kai again. Sometimes, even Gu Yuan and Gu Lai would be fooled by him, genuinely believing that this kid's strength had not improved. However, Gu Fei's fans did not think so. Although their strength was not as great as Gu Fei's, they could still perceive the intensity of his Kai fluctuations. If Gu Fei's aura was like a prison and an abyss before, possessing terrifying pressure, then he was now like a calm sea, seemingly completely harmless, yet deep within lay a terrifying nightmare. Those who admired Gu Fei only believed that his strength had surged, and they were no longer able to perceive his true power. Naturally, everyone admired Gu Fei even more, and Gu Fei smiled, enjoying the subtle emotional value brought by this admiration. Speaking of which, because he had always hidden his strength and the Kai fluctuations on his body, several people in this space wormhole had set their sights on him. Gu Fei's attire looked very ordinary, but those who knew their stuff could, with a little care, discover just how rare the fabric was. Not to mention anything else, his pair of cloud-piercing boots alone were made from the hide of a cloud beast. Cloud beasts were almost extinct in the northwest continent, and the strength of every cloud beast was extremely terrifying. Yet, that young man appeared to have ordinary strength, but possessed so many treasures. He was probably a disciple who had secretly slipped out of some prominent family or reclusive sect. Within the space wormhole, many vicious and evil individuals were hiding. They feared being hunted down by enemies, so they always hid in the space wormhole, ready to escape at any time. Now, with such a rich little lamb running in, wasn't it like entering a wolf's den? These desperate outlaws never considered others' family backgrounds. As long as the person was valuable and easy to bully, they would swarm like hungry wolves. Thus, for several days, Gu Fei had no peace. He had to face a hand that might reach out from the shadows at any moment, or a sword that appeared out of thin air. Those people all wanted to kill him, then seize his treasures and flee. Gu Fei sneered. Did these people really think he was easy to bully? Of course, when faced with sneak attacks, he showed no mercy. He dealt with them one by one or two at a time. Those people came aggressively and left in a panic. No one had expected such terrifying strength to be hidden within the seemingly weak young man. After this, no one else foolishly came to disturb his journey. Gu Fei was also able to travel single-mindedly, heading towards his destination. Gu Fei's first destination was the Black Corner region. Because of his cultivation technique, he needed to absorb an exotic flame. Therefore, Gu Fei wanted to directly seize Han Feng's Sea Heart flame. Thus, after 2.5 months of arduous travel, Gu Fei finally arrived at the northwest continent's famous den of evil, the Black Corner region. Here, due to its special terrain, it had almost become the most chaotic area on the entire continent. Countless fleeing powerhouses from various countries had fallen here and established the most barbaric rules. In the Black Corner region, there were no legal constraints whatsoever. There was only one law, the law of the jungle. In other words, it was the survival of the fittest. The weak here had no right to exist. This was an extremely pure region. If you wished, even raping a woman in the street would go unopposed. Of course, the prerequisite was that you had better choose your target carefully when preparing, otherwise, the outcome might be quite tragic. In the Black Corner region, women sometimes might be even more terrifying than men, and there was only one reason. They had survived here. Additionally, the Black Corner region could perhaps also be called a continental intelligence hub, with countless pieces of intelligence flowing out from here daily, and then countless pieces of intelligence flowing in from the outside. Chapter 13, Taking the Sea Heart Flame. Han Feng's Fear. The Black Corner region can offer you the fastest shortcut, but of course, the prerequisite is that you must possess sufficient strength and capital. Otherwise, you'll lose your life before your name even becomes known. As a chaotic region renowned throughout the continent here, strong individuals die every day, and strong individuals also flock in from outside every day. This area is filled with death, but also with challenges and temptations. Here, advanced cultivation techniques, Dou techniques, various divine weapons, armor, medicine cauldrons, medicinal ingredients, advanced medicinal pills, and so on, which are rarely seen outside, are dazzlingly abundant. It is said that in the Black Corner region's auction houses, Earth-rank cultivation techniques have appeared twice. Of course, to obtain these, you need to pay a price. This price might be money, or it might be other items in exchange. In short, in the Black Corner region, there will never be a free lunch. Although Gu Fei was here for the first time, he was very clear about the powers in the Black Corner region. He concealed his face, found a place to inquire about information, and once he had clarified the location of Maple City, Gu Fei rushed over. Maple City is located outside the 1,000-mile mountain range of the Jianan Academy's inner academy. The city is not large, yet in the Black Corner region, it holds a crucial position. The reason is none other than the alchemist emperor of the Black Corner region, Han Feng, residing here. As the foremost person in alchemy within the Black Corner region, Han Feng, who had long since become a 6th-grade alchemist, held a considerably high status in the hearts of many powers and even strong individuals. Of course, a 6th-grade alchemist, even when viewed across the entire continent, is not too bad. At least he fares better than others. Ordinary Dou emperors, and even Dou Zong strong individuals, would still be courteous to him when they met. After all, everyone knows what kind of rallying power a 6th-grade alchemist possesses. Maple City, this city, was named after Han Feng. This honor in the Black Corner region, which is filled with chaos and slaughter, only a handful of people can enjoy, and Han Feng is one of them. In the very center of the city, there is a bamboo forest, completely different from the bustling market outside. This bamboo forest has extremely strict defenses. Ordinary people cannot even enter, let alone approach. Even getting within a certain range would result in indiscriminate attacks. Every year, quite a few people are killed by the bamboo forest guards for these reasons. Therefore, although it is quiet here, it is also a forbidden land in the hearts of many people in Maple City. Deep within the bamboo forest, there is a bamboo house, and within it, a relatively high bamboo room with a window. A man sat cross-legged, dressed in an alchemist robe with an exquisitely crafted Feng character on the back of the robe. At this moment, the man was deeply engrossed in a medicinal formula in his hand, appearing very focused and undistracted, while quietly engrossed. The man, whose head was lowered, suddenly looked up, his sharp gaze sweeping around. Gu Fei had already arrived nearby. Although Han Feng didn't detect anything unusual, a sense of unease welled up in his heart. He scanned his gaze around, and his Dou Qi perception didn't detect any disturbance. Han Feng experiences unease, gaining 15 emotion points just as Han Feng lowered his head again. Gu Fei appeared silently, standing a step behind Han Feng. Han Feng suddenly turned his head, startled by Gu Fei, breaking out in a cold sweat. Han Feng experiences fear, gaining 20 emotion points. How is this possible? This person broke through all the defenses, was not discovered by anyone, and just suddenly appeared beside him. Han Feng didn't understand the purpose of this person's visit and dared not attack him rashly. Gu Fei looked incredibly weak, but Han Feng had been in the Black Corner region for many years, and his intuition told him that this kid was very dangerous. Whether to stall for time or to probe, Han Feng politely cupped his fists and asked, "Little brother, why have you suddenly come to my bamboo house?" "Han Feng, I have come for your sea heart flame." Gu Fei spoke directly, stating his purpose. Han Feng was naturally both surprised and angry. This sea heart flame was like his lifeblood. Without it, his alchemy strength would greatly decline. Gu Fei inexplicably appeared out of nowhere, and the first thing he said was to demand the sea heart flame. He became enraged, thinking that perhaps Gu Fei had a treasure that could shield his aura to appear so suddenly. It definitely wasn't because of his extraordinary strength. Han Feng's eyes suddenly slowly closed, and with a flick of his fingertip, a deep blue flame, like clear lake water, strangely emerged from within his body, finally enveloping him tightly. This deep blue flame was quite peculiar. It looked as if a pool of clear lake water was flowing, yet the most truthful sensation clearly told people that this was not a pool of water, but a type of flame. As the deep blue flame rose, the man's soul power surged dramatically at this moment. Han Feng opened his eyes and laughed angrily. "The sea heart flame is right here. If you have the guts, come and take it." The ball of flame flew out, but the scene Han Feng had envisioned, where Gu Fei would be incinerated, did not occur. Gu Fei reached out a hand, and the sea heart flame stopped in front of him. Unable to move forward an inch, seeing this, Han Feng finally realized that the strength of the person before him was something he, plus everyone in the entire bamboo house, could not contend with. Although Han Feng was unwilling, he had no choice but to stop his attack, shaking his head helplessly. Han Feng had no choice but to take out the sea heart flame and hand it to Gu Fei. Gu Fei's expression did not change in the slightest when he was suddenly attacked by the strange flame. He took the sea heart flame and turned to leave. Although Gu Fei could have killed Han Feng because he had just harbored murderous intent towards him. But Gu Fei thought that if someone asked him for his most precious item upon meeting him, he would also want to kill the other party. Therefore, Gu Fei did not kill Han Feng. Moreover, although Han Feng had offended Old Yao and Xiao Yan, he didn't need him to seek revenge. After all, the feud between Han Feng and Xiao Yan and Old Yao had nothing to do with him. Gu Fei accepted the sea heart flame and immediately felt a sense of relief. The Great Flame Heart Sutra he cultivated was originally an ordinary fire attribute, heaven rank cultivation technique, but after an evolution using emotion points previously, this cultivation technique mutated. Ordinary people can only refine one type of strange flame in their lifetime. Strange flames are extremely violent. Even the Yan clan chief can only forcibly fuse two strange flames into a new strange flame. However, by cultivating this mutated cultivation technique, Gu Fei could fuse 5 different strange flames. At this moment, Gu Fei's attention was on the sea heart flame, and he forcibly stored it within his body first. Inadvertently, a wisp of powerful aura leaked out, and that terrifying pressure made Han Feng's face turn pale. Han Feng experiences extreme fear. Gaining 30 emotion points, Gu Fei's expression became a little more pleasant. Han Feng's luck value was stronger than ordinary people, so the emotion points he gained from emotional fluctuations were also considerably higher than others. Chapter 14 Target, Qingshan Town. Don't worry, I'm only here for the strange fire. I won't take your life. A moment later, Gu Fei opened his eyes and looked at Han Feng with sharp gaze. He lowered his voice, making it sound hoarse and sinister. At the same time, Han Feng sensed that his connection with the sea heart flame had been completely severed. This person is terrifying to such an extent. In a mere moment, he severed my connection with the sea heart flame. Han Feng experiences fear and gratitude, emotion value plus 50 as Gu Fei expected. Han Feng, who had a significant role in the original work, possessed very high luck. A single emotional input provided dozens of points, which further convinced Gu Fei that his trip to the Northwest continent was the correct decision. After Gu Fei left, Han Feng felt a sense of relief, as if he had escaped a disaster. After a long while, seeing that Gu Fei had truly left, he finally let out a sigh of relief. As for Gu Fei, now that he had obtained the Sea Heart Flame, his next plan was to head to Black Mark City. He wanted to do some more scavenging there. Actually, he wasn't specifically going to Black Mark City. It was just a stop along the way. Although he didn't know if the Demon Fire Remnant map had been acquired by Yuanyi of the Eight Gates sect yet. But Gu Fei needed to travel to the Jia Ma Empire, and he would pass through Black Mark City on the way. It wouldn't hurt to ask. In the original work, after the 3-year agreement, Xiao Yan went to the Black Corner region and caught the auction of the 3rd Demon Fire Remnant map in Black Mark City. In case Yuanyi had already obtained the Demon Fire Remnant map, Gu Fei could acquire it in advance. Maple City was quite far from Black Mark City, so Gu Fei rested briefly after arriving at Black Mark City. Afterward, he inquired about the location of the Eight Gate sect and concealed his aura. No one stopped him along the way. It was as if he was walking through an uninhabited land. Gu Fei closed his eyes, sensing the fluctuations around him with his Dou Qi. Within 5 li nearby, in the northwest direction, there was an extremely powerful person. That should be Yuanyi. Like a ghost, Gu Fei directly arrived in sect leader Yuanyi's secret chamber. He was dressed in a black robe, concealing his face. Yuanyi was currently sipping tea. Hearing the commotion, he looked at him, very calmly. With his status and strength, Yuanyi believed he didn't need to fear anyone. This black-robed man in front of him must have come with a request, otherwise he would have attacked upon meeting. Yuanyi had seen many individuals like Gu Fei, who broke through numerous checkpoints and layers of defense to appear directly in his secret chamber. These powerful individuals, who didn't want to reveal their true faces and concealed their aura to seek him out, had requests but found it inconvenient to expose their identities, whether it was treasure hunting, killing for treasure, or escaping from vengeful enemies. He had seen too many. Each time he set a high price, Yuanyi would make a fortune. He just didn't know what this person in front of him was seeking. Subsequently, Gu Fei, as Yuanyi expected, directly stated his purpose. "Do you know the whereabouts of a remnant map?" His deep eyes fixed on Yuanyi, and he unhurriedly offered his condition. "I can exchange it for a 6th-grade medicinal pill." Yuanyi experiences surprise. Emotion value +5. Gu Fei heard the system's prompt, but his expression remained unchanged as he looked at him. Through the gap in his black robe, he clearly noticed that Yuanyi's hand, holding the teacup, paused for a moment before he casually brought it to his lips and took a sip of tea. Only then did he turn to look directly at him. His gaze was calm, perfectly concealing the ecstasy in his heart. A 6th-grade medicinal pill. If this medicinal pill were brought out in Black Mark City, it could cause a bloody storm. Although a 6th-grade medicinal pill couldn't compare to a grade 7 pill, it was still a rare item, extremely valuable. Yet this black-robed man was using it to trade for a remnant map. Moreover, judging by his appearance, he probably had many more treasures. Yuanyi's eyes darted around, and he immediately had an idea. When Gu Fei mentioned the word remnant map, Yuanyi knew which one he was talking about. Logically speaking, an ordinary remnant map wasn't worth this price. After all, a remnant map, though it might lead to treasures, was ultimately incomplete. It would also be more difficult to find treasures with it. But that particular remnant map was different. That was a demon fire remnant map that could potentially lead to a purifying demonic lotus flame. Yuanyi pondered for a moment and said, "I don't have a remnant map here." Yuanyi experiences greed, emotion value +30. Gu Fei raised an eyebrow, immediately knowing that Yuanyi indeed possessed the remnant map. The fact that he could generate greed indicated that Yuanyi clearly had the remnant map, but wanted to raise its price to gain more benefits. Gu Fei rubbed his thumb and forefinger together, deciding not to hold back anymore, and directly displayed his aura. Yuanyi was instantly startled. Yuanyi experiences fear, emotion value +10. The teacup in his hand shattered instantly. His face turned pale, and his pupils were filled with dread and fright. But greed still made him hesitate. Gu Fei shook his head, sighing inwardly at Yuanyi's lack of discernment. He continued to release 80% of his aura, and the entire secret chamber seemed to be on the verge of collapsing, let alone Yuanyi, who was being targeted. Yuanyi experiences extreme fear, emotion value +12 under the immense pressure of the aura. Yuanyi felt the crisis of death, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. With a pale face, unable to move his body, he could only shout, I'll give it, spare my life." Although Gu Fei had no intention of killing, he could release an aura and killing intent that even Yuanyi, the sect leader of the Eight-Gate sect, feared. He smiled faintly, retracting the aura from his body. Yuanyi immediately felt his whole body relax. He got up to retrieve the remnant map for Gu Fei, and under Gu Fei's calm, unperturbed gaze, he tremblingly presented it with both hands. Gu Fei took the remnant map and swaggered out. Along the way, he also collected scattered emotional values from Yuanyi, mixed with fear, dread, and resentment. He didn't pay attention to it, but instead calculated the time. Gu Fei guessed that Xiao Yan probably hadn't entered the magical Beast Mountain range for training yet. After all, with his current strength, going in would only be courting death. Since Xiao Yan hadn't gone yet, the remnant map in the cave should still be there. Since one remnant map was already in hand, Gu Fei decided to enter the magical Beast Mountain range and acquire the remnant map in that cave as well. With his current strength, as long as he didn't provoke those terrifying demonic beasts that occupied certain areas, he could walk freely through the magical Beast Mountain range. More than half of the resources in his storage ring remained, so Gu Fei didn't need to stop and rest. He yearned to constantly grow stronger and urgently needed the purifying demonic lotus flame. One remnant map was already in hand. Next was the other. Once the remnant maps were collected, he would be able to obtain the contingency plan left behind by the pure lotus demon saint back then. This way, when the purifying demonic lotus flame appeared, Gu Fei would be able to gain the greatest advantage and finally claim the purifying demonic lotus flame for himself. The purification lotus demon flame was the third-ranked strange fire in the world. Its power was comparable to a 7-star Du Sheng, second only to the void swallowing flame and the so-called emperor flame, the first on the strange fire ranking list. Obtaining the purifying demonic lotus flame would allow Gu Fei's strength to rapidly increase. Next, Gu Fei immediately set off for Qingshan Town, located in the border region of the Jia Ma Empire. Chapter 15. First Encounter with the Little Medical Fairy. Qingshan Town is located in the northeastern province of the Jia Ma Empire, almost adjacent to the magical Beast Mountain range. At Gu Fei's speed, he arrived here in less than a week, and he also took the opportunity to refine the Sea Heart Flame. Qingshan Town also seems to be called Monster Town, right? Gu Fei looked at the bustling and lively town in front of him, murmuring softly, Qingshan Town is close to the magical Beast Mountain range, so it should theoretically be somewhat dangerous. After all, in the minds of demonic beasts, they don't really distinguish human territory. Qingshan Town is prosperous and lively, with many cultivation resources, so powerful demonic beasts should often come to plunder it. However, there are many mercenary groups here, led by the 3 major mercenary groups, each with over 100 members. While taking on missions, they also protect the peace of Qingshan Town. Although a few mercenaries are not good people, most of them regard Qingshan Town as their home, so they naturally protect it well. Taking a stroll here is also a good choice. Walking on the streets of Qingshan Town, looking at the dazzling array of shops around him, Gu Fei stroked his chin. He wandered aimlessly, and before long, he came to a medicinal shop called Wan Yao Pharmacy. The medicinal shop was lavishly decorated, with a faint scent of medicine wafting inside, looking very good. There were also several tall and burly mercenaries guarding the shop entrance, likely hired by the owner as guards. Although the overall order in Qingshan Town is good, petty thieves are inevitable, and these mercenaries are there to deal with them. Gu Fei scanned the Wan Yao Pharmacy, sniffing the faint scent of medicine in the air. A hint of joy on his face found it. At the same time, a purple-haired girl walked into the shop entrance. Her light footsteps approached from afar, and Gu Fei unconsciously turned his head to look. The girl was wearing a light white dress. Although her appearance was not peerless, she could be considered a rare beauty. Her serene, smiling face exuded a fresh and ethereal aura, and this unique temperament immediately greatly increased the girl's charm. Her slender waist, which could be clasped with one hand, was bound by a green sash. Her waist was the most delicate and soft Gu Fei had ever seen among women. At this time, Gu Fei was not wearing a black robe as he had in the Black Corner region. Instead, he had long since changed into the attire of a young master, looking handsome and dashing. Although he perfectly concealed his kai, his unique temperament was still very attractive. At a glance, the most eye-catching person in the entire medicinal shop was Gu Fei. Although his attire was not overly opulent, and the kai on him indicated that his strength was not top tier, he always had a unique charm that made people I couldn't help but look at him twice. The young man stood tall and straight, his upright figure immediately showing that he was a wealthy young master from a noble family. He was absolutely not like those crude mercenaries who were very active in Qingshan town, living by the sword. Young master, are you looking for medicinal materials? Xiao Yixian smiled faintly and proactively came forward to ask. Her pair of purple eyes looked at Gu Fei with a smile, her delicate hands hidden within her sleeves. Even though Gu Fei was not obsessed with beauty, his tone of voice couldn't help but soften a bit. Through the ethereal temperament and elegant beauty of the purple-haired girl in front of him, Gu Fei had already guessed that this girl was Xiao Yixian, so he began to inquire about medicinal materials. I need medicinal materials like blood lotus essence and ice heart flame grass. Although Xiao Yixian was proficient in pharmacology and skilled in treating illnesses and saving lives, she had always stayed in this small Qingshan town, and her knowledge was truly limited. The medicinal materials Gu Fei mentioned were all uncommon. Hearing them suddenly, Xiao Yixian was momentarily unsure what blood lotus essence was. The system prompted. Xiao Yixian generated a confused emotional value plus 90. Her beautiful eyes showed some shyness, and she blushed slightly at her limited knowledge. Gu Fei heard the system's prompt, understood, and proactively explained to Xiao Yixian to avoid her embarrassment. This blood lotus essence is a medicinal material a few times more potent than Huanglian essence. She had heard of Huanglian essence, but this blood lotus essence was a few times more potent than Huanglian essence. Xiao Yixian paused, then nodded and continued to listen to Gu Fei. Seeing Xiao Yixian nod, Gu Fei continued. The moment I stepped into the medicinal shop, I already smelled the scent of blood lotus essence, and it was very strong. Seeing Xiao Yixian still somewhat at a loss, Gu Fei didn't want to make the beauty embarrassed, so he proactively walked towards the source of the scent. He took a few steps forward, carefully scanning the surroundings. Soon, Gu Fei found it in an inconspicuous corner of the medicinal shop. Gu Fei picked up the blood lotus essence, walked over, and placed it in his palm for Xiao Yixian to see. It's this. The blood lotus essence looked almost identical to Huanglian essence, only it had a faint red hue. Although it was only a small piece, its fragrance was rich. Xiao Yixian took a light sniff and immediately felt refreshed, a sparkle appearing in her eyes. The system prompted. Xiao Yixian generated an admiring emotional value plus 90 as expected, seeing Gu Fei's rich knowledge of medicinal materials and his unique keen perception. Xiao Yixian couldn't help but feel a hint of admiration for this handsome young master. Qingshan town was not large, and Xiao Yixian had not met many wealthy young masters. But those young masters would bother her at her healing place every few days, talking about offering a hefty sum for her hand. Xiao Yixian naturally found it annoying, but her gentle nature prevented her from saying anything harsh. She could only ignore them. However, her dislike for those uneducated young masters grew a few points. Now, although Gu Fei's attire was a bit more ordinary than those young masters, his strength was much greater than theirs. Xiao Yixian's eyes sparkled with tiny lights as she looked at Gu Fei with admiration. "Young master, are you an alchemist?" Xiao Yixian subconsciously asked. After all, A unique perception of medicinal materials and a rich knowledge base are essential skills for an alchemist. Yes, Gu Fei saw no need to conceal this point. He nodded in response. Xiao Yixian smiled in surprise. Young master is indeed an alchemist. The system prompted. Xiao Yixian generated an admiring emotion. Emotional value plus 100. Xiao Yixian exclaimed, her eyes shining even brighter. She was quite excited, a faint blush appearing on her face. The system prompted. Xiao Yixian generated an excited emotion. Emotional value plus 80. Everyone in Qingshan Town knew that the famous Xiao Yixian's dream had always been to become an alchemist. Her gentle and kind nature made many injured people seek her out for healing, and she was also extremely skilled at treating illnesses and saving lives. Thus, she earned the beautiful title of Xiao Yixian. Every time a powerful alchemist came to Qingshan Town, Xiao Yixian would ask for their guidance. However, her attribute was not suitable for becoming an alchemist, so Xiao Yixian had to settle for becoming a physician who treated injuries and saved lives. A physician could only refine things like medicinal powders, but could not refine medicinal pills with powerful effects. Chapter 16, The Worship of the Little Medical Fairy. Gu Fei had not wasted time when he was previously strolling on the streets. He had also inquired about some things he wanted to know in the tea house. Most of the mercenaries were very enthusiastic. Gu Fei just started a topic, and they each took turns to continue the conversation. Gu Fei calmly sipped his tea on the side, having already grasped all the information he wanted. He curled his lips into a smile, saying that he would treat them to tea, as their guardianship of Qingshan Town was truly hard work. Those few mercenaries were even more touched, spilling information as if it cost nothing. Yun Ling experienced feelings of being touched, emotional value plus 0.1. Yu Cheng experienced feelings of gratitude, emotional value plus 0.1. Although Gu Fei did not care about these mosquito-sized emotional values, the intelligence he gained from them was precious. At present, this blood lotus essence further confirmed his judgment. The blood lotus essence had not yet been taken by Xiao Yan and remained in the Wan Yao pharmacy. All of this combined indicated that Xiao Yan had not yet arrived at the magical beast mountain range. Gu Fei was still pondering Xiao Yan's possible whereabouts, and at this moment, Xiao Yixian spoke again, her voice soft and clear. Young master, if you don't mind, you can join us in 3 days to collect medicinal herbs in the magical beast mountain range. She was a little shy, but she really wanted to invite this alchemist who made her feel very reliable, so she racked her brains to continue. The medicinal herbs there are very abundant. The Wan Yao pharmacy doesn't have the medicinal herbs young master needs, but the magical beast mountain range will definitely have them. Gu Fei pondered for a moment, and under Xiao Yixian's anxious gaze, he slowly nodded. All right then. He agreed, and Xiao Yixian's eyes were filled with joy. Xiao Yixian experienced feelings of happiness, emotional value, plus 100. The magical beast mountain range had quite a few incredibly powerful demonic beasts. Normally, they were fine collecting herbs on the outskirts, but once they accidentally ventured deeper, they were almost completely annihilated by a terrifying demonic beast. Although Gu Fei's Kai fluctuation did not seem strong, Xiao Yixian inexplicably believed that the young master's strength was beyond what their mercenaries could compare to. Thus, at Xiao Yixian's invitation, Gu Fei stayed in the Wan Yao pharmacy's manor. Xiao Yixian took Gu Fei to meet Boss Yao, directly introducing Gu Fei as an alchemist. Boss Yao was also very polite upon seeing such an unfamiliar young master. After all, Gu Fei looked very young. Alchemists all rely on extraordinary talent and numerous cultivation resources to achieve anything. And such a young alchemist with an extraordinary appearance must have an extraordinary background. Although Boss Yao could not discern his cultivation at first glance, he sensed a unique aura about him. Moreover, Xiao Yixian's respectful attitude towards him was clearly not fake. Boss Yao pondered deeply in his heart, thinking that if he could curry favor with this alchemist, the opportunity would be significant. Facing Boss Yao's careful gaze, Gu Fei also did not stand on ceremony. I'm in a bit of a hurry, so I won't wait until 3 days later. I want to set off tomorrow. Gu Fei said with a smile. He subtly revealed a hint of his cultivation aura. The next second, Boss Yao's eyes changed dramatically, as if he had seen a peerless, vicious beast filled with terror. Boss Yao experienced feelings of fear, emotional value, plus 10. He felt that the young man's aura was several times more terrifying than the Tier 3 demonic beast he had once faced, and the immense pressure made Boss Yao unconsciously afraid. Thus, his original intention to play hard to get was extinguished. Boss Yao respectfully agreed to Gu Fei's request and arranged for the medical team to enter the mountains to collect herbs the next day. He could not afford to offend such a terrifying person. After giving his instructions, Gu Fei calmly followed Xiao Yixian to the courtyard where he would be staying, not exposing any of his cultivation aura. That evening's dinner was personally delivered by Xiao Yixian to Gu Fei's courtyard. Xiao Yixian's purpose was also very simple. She wanted to take advantage of the rare opportunity to meet a powerful alchemist and consult him extensively about pharmacology. Such a formidable alchemist must surely possess vast knowledge of pharmacology. She entered, carrying a portion of dinner. The purple-haired beauty under the moonlight added a touch of charm, and with the faint moonlight spilling down, Xiao Yixian was captivatingly beautiful. Her pair of purple eyes stared at Gu Fei, and for such an eager-to-learn beauty, Gu Fei was not stingy. Xiao Yixian even specially brought a few of her medical books, which were filled with her graceful handwriting. Subscribe for more amazing novel audiobooks. Don't forget to like, comment, and share Infinite Novel Audio. The books had been flipped through very frequently, with their edges curling up, but Xiao Yixian had taken good care of them. Apart from a slight yellowing, there were no other signs of damage. She did not disturb Gu Fei, sitting quietly by the side, waiting for him to finish eating. Gu Fei ate very elegantly. Xiao Yixian stared and unconsciously became lost in thought. When she came back to her senses, Xiao Yixian's face was flushed and her eyes darted about. Xiao Yixian experienced feelings of shyness, emotional value, plus 100. Gu Fei suddenly received a system notification and couldn't help but look at Xiao Yixian with some confusion, seeing her charming appearance with eyes full of spring. Xiao Yixian saw Gu Fei looking over, and after meeting his gaze, she nervously averted her eyes. He unconsciously scratched his head, not understanding what Xiao Yixian was thinking. After finishing dinner in a few bites, Xiao Yixian walked over to help him clear the dishes. Her slender hands were delicate, her eyelids lowered, and her cheeks glowed with a faint, moist radiance under the moonlight. The beautiful scene before him made Gu Fei reluctant to disturb her. Once everything was tidied up, Xiao Yixian hesitated, then picked up the medical books and walked to Gu Fei's side. In the past, Xiao Yixian felt that if she met an alchemist who was willing to teach her, she should just ask openly. But for some reason this time, facing this young master Gu Fei, a sense of girlish shyness welled up in Xiao Yixian's heart. Xiao Yixian experienced feelings of shyness, emotional value plus 80. Seeing that she couldn't move for a long time, Gu Fei took the initiative to stand up and take her medical books, which made her pause. He opened to the page where Xiao Yixian had carefully placed a bookmark. Seeing her graceful handwriting, Gu Fei's lips curved into a smile. "Is there a problem here?" Gu Fei asked faintly, without looking at Xiao Yixian. Xiao Yixian lowered her head and replied in a muffled voice. "This medicinal herb and Wumu Zai cannot be taken at the same time. The patient's side effects will be more intense, and in severe cases, it can even cause rejection." Previously, Gu Fei did not hesitate to teach her, and with just a few sentences, Xiao Yixian's eyes became increasingly serious, nodding continuously. Gu Fei's few words made her feel greatly enlightened. Xiao Yixian experienced feelings of admiration, emotional value plus 90. She looked up, secretly glancing at Gu Fei's profile. Gu Fei was earnestly explaining the pharmacology, his eyes very focused. Xiao Yixian experienced feelings of admiration, emotional value plus 100 receiving the system prompt. Gu Fei subtly curved his lips, then continued to explain earnestly under the moonlight. Their figures overlapped, creating a uniquely beautiful scene. Chapter 17. Joining hands in Warcraft Mountain Range. Little Dr. Fairy's panic the next morning. The Wan Yao Pharmacy started recruiting mercenaries early in the Qingshan town to go up the mountain together. The Wan Yao Pharmacy was never stingy when it came to their treatment. They promised many good things, including healing for the mercenaries. Therefore, many mercenaries came to sign up. Boss Yao hesitated for a moment, then took a step back and looked at Gu Fei. How about you choose the mercenaries? Gu Fei glanced at him with a half-smile, then shook his head. Boss Yao had no choice but to select people according to the usual rules, constantly glancing at Gu Fei's expression with trepidation as he did so. Gu Fei's terrifying aura from yesterday had simply left too deep an impression on him. Recalling yesterday, Boss Yao's body twitched. These mercenaries are you. Are you satisfied? Boss Yao generated a fearful emotion value plus 10. Gu Fei responded faintly, and the recruitment of mercenaries was concluded. The Wan Yao Pharmacy was busy during the day, so Boss Yao did not see them off. Xiao Yixian followed behind Gu Fei, with a large group of mercenaries trailing behind them. Among the mercenaries accompanying Gu Fei to the magical Beast Mountain Range, just like in the original story, the Wolf Head Mercenary Group was also present. Furthermore, the Wolf Head Mercenary Group was the strongest among the three major mercenary groups in Qingshan Town. Therefore, they were also the main force among this group of mercenaries. However, Gu Fei narrowed his eyes and inadvertently looked back at the leader of the Wolf Head Mercenary Group, who was walking at the very end, head lowered with an unreadable expression. That was young Master Mu Lai. He had ulterior motives. Xiao Yixian introduced Gu Fei to everyone, and when she revealed Gu Fei's identity as an alchemist, the mercenaries' eyes were filled with respect and longing. Mu Chuan generated a respectful emotion. Emotion value plus 0.1. Qin Zheng generated an adoring emotion. Emotion value plus 0. Most of these mercenaries who lived by the sword had also fantasized about becoming legendary alchemists who could stir up a storm. But most, due to lack of talent and poverty, had no choice but to become mercenaries. Now, with a young alchemist appearing before them, they naturally yearned for such a path. However, Gu Fei immediately frowned slightly. Mu Lai generated a worried emotion value plus 10 in an instant. Gu Fei looked up at a tall, burly mercenary. That mercenary was the leader of the Wolf Head Mercenary Group, and also their young master. Gu Fei remembered his name, Mu Lai. He was also the Mu Lai who, in the original story, wanted to harm Xiao Yixian and Xiao Yan for profit. Gu Fei did not believe that the worry of such a malicious person would be for the safety of a seemingly delicate alchemist like him. Calculating the time, at this point in the original story, the person who entered the magical Beast Mountain Range with Xiao Yixian should have been Xiao Yan. Gu Fei had a sudden thought and realized, at that time, Xiao Yan was just a person of average strength, so Mu Lai was naturally reckless. But now it was him, an alchemist. Mu Lai wouldn't be thinking that he was in the way and would disrupt his plans, would he? Therefore, the original order should have been for the strongest Wolf Head Mercenary Group to lead the way, with Gu Fei and Xiao Yixian walking in the safest middle of the group. However, Gu Fei had walked at the very front from the beginning, and Mu Lai had tacitly allowed this suicidal behavior, even secretly giving a death order to the entire mercenary group, not to remind Gu Fei. But he had accepted Boss Yao's entrustment to escort Gu Fei and Xiao Yixian, so he still had to put on a show when encountering demonic beasts. What's more, Mu Lai was practically seething with anger at Gu Fei right now. When the first wave of demonic beasts suddenly attacked, Mu Lai deliberately slowed down his attack speed, thinking of waiting for the demonic beast's attacks to land on Gu Fei before making his move. He didn't expect that this person, who had pretended to be full of courage and led the way when they first went up the mountain, would, when attacked by demonic beasts, pull Xiao Yixian back and hide behind him. The first time Mu Lai thought it was an accident, but then several times in a row, Gu Fei would suddenly grab Xiao Yixian and dart behind him, with fierce attacks following one after another. Mu Lai generated an angry emotion. Emotion value +10. Watching Mu Lai deal with the situation rather awkwardly, Gu Fei's lips curled up. Since he wanted to scheme against him, then let's see if Mu Lai could handle the gift he was sending. Xiao Yixian obediently followed Gu Fei, her eyes alertly watching her surroundings. She made no comment on Gu Fei's playful actions. Along the way, after eliminating several waves of demonic beast attacks, the team finally arrived at an area in the magical Beast Mountain range where medicinal herbs gathered. Xiao Yixian generated an excited emotion. Emotion value +80. Xiao Yixian's eyes were bright, and she looked very happy. Gu Fei chuckled. This girl was very engrossed in medicinal herbs. In her eyes, treasures worth 1,000 gold probably couldn't compare to the rich medicinal herb area before them. Xiao Yixian quickly gave everyone a few instructions, telling them to rest on the spot first, and then go collect the medicinal herbs after they were well rested. Gu Fei, however, said nothing, leaning against a tree with his arms crossed, silently watching her. The spot he chose was very clever. This position allowed him to see both the herb-collecting area and the movements of almost all the mercenaries. This also included Mu Lai, who clearly had something in mind after hearing Xiao Yixian's words. Mu Lai generated a malicious emotion. Emotion value +10. Xiao Yixian hesitated, glanced at Gu Fei, and then walked over again. I'll go pick out some medicinal herbs that the Wan Yao pharmacy needs to replenish first. Young master, you can come down by yourself after you've rested enough. The medicinal herbs here are very abundant, and there are many that even I can't name. I hope there will be some that young master needs. She looked up at Gu Fei, then waved goodbye with a smiling face. Gu Fei stood still, watching Xiao Yixian leave the camp alone and head into the surrounding dense forest. She didn't know that the next moment, Mu Lai, who had been pretending to be idle, got up and quietly followed behind her. Gu Fei frowned, calculating in his mind. He knew Mu Lai had ill intentions and was worried that Xiao Yixian wouldn't be able to defeat him. So, Gu Fei chose to follow behind Mu Lai as well, quietly trailing them. Gu Fei himself was skilled at concealing his aura, not to mention that Mu Lai's strength was not even half of his. Throughout the tracking, Mu Lai didn't notice a single clue. After passing through the dense forest, a cliff appeared in Gu Fei's line of sight. Mu Lai was hiding in the dark, peeking at Xiao Yixian. Gu Fei was behind Mu Lai, and Xiao Yixian had just laboriously climbed up from below the cliff. Mu Lai, why are you sneaking around behind Xiao Yixian? Seeing the malice in Mu Lai's eyes, Gu Fei made the first move. He attached his battle cry to his voice and shouted loudly towards Mu Lai's direction not far away. What? Hearing this, Mu Lai panicked and abruptly turned his head. He hadn't expected that someone would actually be following him, and he hadn't noticed at all. Xiao Yixian, who was walking in front, also had a pale face at this moment. She was a little flustered, not expecting that Mu Lai, the young master of the Wolf Head mercenary group, would actually be secretly following her. Chapter 18, Xiao Yixian is my friend. I will take care of this matter. Xiao Yixian's pretty face was pale. She first looked at Mu Lai with a hint of panic, then turned her purple eyes to Gu Fei. Her eyes were full of surprise, and a trace of almost imperceptible unease. The Xiao Yixian felt uneasy, emotion value +100. She stood there, quite at a loss. Suddenly, two people appeared one after another, and the Xiao Yixian didn't know what to do. After all, Gu Fei felt more reliable to her, so the Xiao Yixian looked at him helplessly, seemingly hoping he could provide an explanation. Otherwise, why would both of them suddenly appear behind her? Xiao Yixian, I just saw this person sneaking behind you. Worried he had ill intentions, I followed him over. Gu Fei naturally felt no guilt. After all, he hadn't done anything shady. Instead, he took the initiative to pin a hat of ill intent on Mu Lai. Mu Lai felt angry, emotion value +10. Mu Lai, who had been trying to argue, glared at Gu Fei with a mix of shock and anger. But he didn't dare to tear off the pretense with Gu Fei right now. After all, Mu Lai, who could sit in the position of young master of the wolf-head mercenary group, was not a fool. He could certainly see the clues from Boss Yao's selection of mercenaries earlier. This alchemist's identity was probably not simple. Moreover, he had been a mercenary for many years, and his most basic and essential skill was to be vigilant at all times. Although his full attention had just been on tracking the Xiao Yixian, maintaining vigilance was already an instinctual body reaction. If Gu Fei had truly followed him the whole way, he couldn't possibly have not noticed. So this indicated that Gu Fei either had extremely profound strength or possessed a very powerful method of concealing his Kai. Therefore, he could only glare at Gu Fei angrily, not daring to immediately make a move. The Xiao Yixian was full of trust in Gu Fei. After all, how could such a formidable alchemist deceive her? The Xiao Yixian felt grateful emotion value plus 100. Her heart was filled with gratitude towards Gu Fei, and at the same time, her wariness towards Mu Lai grew heavier. Mu Lai suddenly tracked her without reason and didn't want to be discovered by her. Could it be that her secret had been exposed? The Xiao Yixian shook her head. She hid it so well, and no one around had found out. How could a mere Mu Lai possibly know? To confirm her suspicions, the Xiao Yixian was unwilling to let the matter rest and pretend it hadn't happened. Mu Lai, why are you tracking me? The Xiao Yixian looked at Mu Lai and questioned him loudly. The forest was dense and stifling, with a sense of oppression. Sunlight couldn't penetrate, so the Xiao Yixian couldn't clearly see the expression on Mu Lai's face. He chuckled sinisterly twice and said unhurriedly, "Heh heh, I'll just be direct. There should be a treasure trove down here." Seeing the Xiao Yixian's relentless persistence, and since things had come to this, Mu Lai simply stopped pretending and directly stated the situation. The Xiao Yixian's figure swayed, utterly incredulous, her beautiful eyes filled with obvious shock and doubt. "I only told my assistant, Liffy, about this matter." Her beautiful purple eyes were then filled with the anger and sorrow of betrayal. You bribed her. Even someone as gentle and kind-hearted as the Xiao Yixian wasn't entirely without temper. Liffy was not only her friend, but had also long been considered a close confidante. The Xiao Yixian had shared many thoughts and secrets with Liffy. Yet, she never expected that something only heaven, earth, she, and Liffy knew would be known by Mu Lai. Besides Liffy, who else could it be? Mu Lai laughed several times, nodding to admit it. He most enjoyed seeing the shocked and enraged expressions of those who learned they had been betrayed by their best friend. The Xiao Yixian's emotions fluctuated too greatly, and her natural talent and strength were not in combat, so she was not to be feared. As for the remaining one, Mu Lai turned to look at Gu Fei. He said with a smile, "Young master, why not explore the treasure trove with my wolf-head mercenary group?" He stared at Gu Fei's still calm face, saying meaningfully, word by word, "At that time, the treasure trove will be split 5-5. Any other person who had come out with the Xiao Yixian, whether an alchemist, a servant from the Wan Yao pharmacy, or even Boss Yao, would probably have agreed without hesitation. After all, this was a great opportunity to cooperate with the strongest mercenary group in Qingshan town to share a treasure trove, and Mu Lai was even willing to concede a profit. Given his personality, it would be good if he didn't kill people and take everything for himself. For him to be willing to give half to Gu Fei now was simply a windfall from the heavens. Mu Lai unhurriedly picked his ear and lightly blew on his fingertips. How about it? Facing Mu Lai's invitation, Gu Fei first pretended to be tempted. He deliberately showed a hesitant expression, and sure enough, he saw Mu Lai unconsciously grin sinisterly. Mu Lai felt smug, emotion value plus 10. Gu Fei raised an eyebrow. It's probably a trick. He didn't believe Mu Lai was such a generous person. He feared that after they cooperated to get the treasure trove, Mu Lai would kill him, dispose of his body below, and come up alone. Facing Mu Lai's invitation and his extremely confident gaze, Gu Fei feigned a nod of agreement. But just as the corner of Mu Lai's mouth was about to curve up so much it would fly off his face, Gu Fei's expression changed. He refused decisively. Someone like you. Do you even deserve to cooperate with me? Mu Lai felt angry, emotion value plus 10. What did you say? Flames of fury ignited in Mu Lai's eyes. He began to move his body, and the sound of bones grinding could be heard intermittently. Seeing Gu Fei's resolute attitude, the Xiao Yixian stared at him unblinkingly, her emotions very complex. The Xiao Yixian felt moved, emotion value plus 80. The Xiao Yixian felt dependent, emotion value plus 80, seeing that Gu Fei was unwilling to cooperate. Mu Lai was too lazy to waste any more time. He grinned savagely, revealing his true, vile face. Since you're unwilling to cooperate, then don't blame me, Your Excellency, for not holding back. His gloomy gaze fell on the Xiao Yixian, carrying a faint killing intent, but then he was caught off guard by Gu Fei's tactless words. The Xiao Yixian is my friend. I'm taking charge of this matter, Gu Fei said. The Xiao Yixian felt moved, emotion value plus 80. Mu Lai looked at him with some surprise, wondering if this kid was truly unafraid of death or just pretending. He simply stopped talking nonsense and directly threatened Gu Fei, his hands also moving. Since that's the case, then don't blame me. Even if you, young man, have a powerful background, no one will suspect my wolf-head mercenary group if you die silently in the magical Beast Mountain range. A dark glint flashed in Mu Lai's eyes as he quietly watched the oblivious Gu Fei, killing intent stirring in his heart. Gu Fei was in no hurry to leave. After all, with his current strength, not to mention that it would be hard to find an opponent in all of Qingshan Town, there wasn't one in the entire Jia Ma Empire. The Xiao Yixian had already hidden behind him. He stood in front of the Xiao Yixian, his tall figure seemingly ready to shield her from all harm. The Xiao Yixian couldn't help but feel a little dazed under Mu Lai's sinister gaze. In a short while, over a dozen mercenaries emerged from the dense forest, something Gu Fei had already noticed. Chapter 19 Little Medical Fairy. Brother Gu Fei, please help me. Gu Fei didn't even spare a glance for the dozen or so mercenaries. Even if they all attacked him at once, they wouldn't pose any threat. The same went for Mu Lai. Mu Lai generated resentment. Emotional value plus 15. He stared intently at Gu Fei, his eyes filled with murderous intent. Since they weren't willing to cooperate with the wolf-head mercenary group, there was no need to keep them alive. Even if Gu Fei was powerful, so what? He refused to believe that a group of people here couldn't kill an alchemist. Gu Fei naturally sensed Mu Lai's murderous intent. Since that was the case, he naturally wouldn't show any mercy. Gu Fei's eyes held a hint of disdain, and with a slight lift of his palm, a surge of Kai shot out. The airflow was faint but incredibly fast, and when it pierced through Mu Lai's chest, he was still wearing a gloomy expression, not having reacted. The next moment, Mu Lai's chest was instantly punctured. His expression didn't even change as he fell straight to the ground, clearly dead beyond all doubt. The other mercenaries, who had been aggressive, saw this and most of them were so scared their legs turned to jelly. Lin Yi generated fear, emotional value plus 0. Tu Mu Huan generated dread, emotional value plus 0.1. They stood frozen in place, lacking even the courage to flee. After all, the strength Gu Fei had just displayed was simply terrifying. With that casual flick, even the young lord, a 7-star Du Master, was instantly killed. Mu Lai was a renowned expert within the entire wolf-head mercenary group, and even Qingshan Town. Many of the dozen or so mercenaries weren't even Du Masters. How could they possibly resist? Xiao Yixian generated shock, emotional value plus 100. Xiao Yixian was also stunned by Gu Fei's strength. Living in a small place like Qingshan Town, where had she ever seen such a powerful expert? Xiao Yixian wouldn't be afraid of Gu Fei just because he killed Mu Lai with one blow. After all, it was Mu Lai who had wanted to kill them first. She clutched her chest, a wave of lingering fear washing over her. Xiao Yixian generated relief, emotional value plus 90. If Gu Fei hadn't been here today, she would either have exposed her secret or met her end here. Some other mercenaries, seeing that they couldn't defeat such a terrifying expert, tried to use the wolf-head mercenary group's leader to intimidate Gu Fei. You killed the young lord today, and if you dare to kill us, the leader will certainly not let you off. A mercenary spoke with forced bravado, but felt a bit guilty. Yuan Chang generated guilt, emotional value +1. This person is so strong, I wonder if the leader can actually kill him. That's right, our leader is a 2-star Dou master, so by then, you won't even have time to beg for mercy. Qin Zheng generated smugness, emotional value +1. Gu Fei looked disdainful. A 2-star Dou master, he had thought it would be someone more impressive. Gu Fei was equally ruthless towards these mercenaries. He was too lazy to kill them, so he moved quickly, and a dozen powerful Kai attacks danced nimbly through the forest. The cultivation of these dozen or so mercenaries was so easily crippled, turning them all into ordinary people. Xiao Yixian generated shock, emotional value, +100. Xiao Yixian's beautiful eyes were filled with shock. Gu Fei's methods were sharp. It was her first time witnessing such a scene. However, after the initial shock, Xiao Yixian didn't feel that Gu Fei was wrong for completely crippling the cultivation of those dozen people. After all, in this world, that was the law. A group of weaklings harbored murderous intent towards a strong one. The strong one not killing them all was already an act of benevolence. I hope I didn't scare you, Gu Fei said with a smile, looking very relaxed and at ease. No. Xiao Yixian gently shook her head, a strange glint in her beautiful eyes. Gu Fei then walked to the edge of the cliff, glanced down, and his eyes showed appreciation. This cliff, with its strange, overgrown trees, is quite ingenious. It seems there's an immortal cave left by a senior here. It's good that you have this opportunity, he murmured, but there wasn't a hint of greed in his eyes. Xiao Yixian, however, was stunned. She had originally intended to split the treasure trove with Gu Fei, but hearing his words, Xiao Yixian realized that with Gu Fei's status, he might disdain to seize the treasure trove here. Xiao Yixian knew that after what happened today, this secret would inevitably spread. Such a treasure trove would surely attract many treasure seekers. If she didn't take it today, she wouldn't have another chance. Xiao Yixian generated hesitation, emotional value +80. Gu Fei's eyes moved, and he proactively asked, "Is there anything you need my help with?" So Xiao Yixian deliberated for a moment, then spoke. "Young master, could I ask you for a favor?" Her eyes were a little uneasy, wondering if she was troubling Gu Fei too much. Gu Fei, however, smiled faintly and nodded. Xiao Yixian was usually shy and gentle, rarely taking the initiative to ask for help, which now indicated that she truly trusted Gu Fei. "Could you help me retrieve the treasures below? Of course, if there's anything the young master fancies, please feel free to choose, just leave the rest for me." Although her heart was bleeding, if Gu Fei hadn't been here today, she wouldn't have obtained the treasure trove at the bottom of the cliff either. Xiao Yixian was naturally grateful to Gu Fei and was willing to let him pick the best treasures first. All right. Although Gu Fei didn't want the treasure trove at the bottom of the cliff, he didn't refute Xiao Yixian and instead nodded in agreement. A woman like Xiao Yixian feared owing favors the most. Sure enough, Xiao Yixian's eyes curved, and her voice became a bit more cheerful. Xiao Yixian generated elation, emotional value +80. Young master, once I've tied the rope, we can go down together. Next, Xiao Yixian took out a coil of rope, intending to rappel down. Though a bit troublesome, it was safer. Xiao Yixian had always used a rope to descend previously. Gu Fei, however, interrupted her actions. "There's no need for such trouble. I naturally have a more convenient method." Gu Fei shook his head, earning a curious look from Xiao Yixian. Xiao Yixian generated curiosity, emotional value +80. This cliff was incredibly steep. Without a rope, what method could Gu Fei possibly have? Gu Fei, however, smiled faintly, and a pair of red wings suddenly unfurled from his back. As the wings vibrated, he whispered a word of apology to Xiao Yixian, then directly wrapped an arm around her slender waist and flew down towards the bottom of the cliff. Xiao Yixian generated shock, emotional value +100 just seeing the vast red wings. Xiao Yixian had already frozen in a daze. Upon seeing that Gu Fei could actually fly with these red wings, Xiao Yixian felt even more stunned. Xiao Yixian generated awe, emotional value plus 100 isn't. This an ability only a Dou master expert can master. How could the ability to fly appear on an alchemist as impossibly young as Gu Fei? This situation even made Xiao Yixian overlook the awkwardness of being held by a man. Chapter 20, Do You Really Want Nothing? After the shock, Xiao Yixian felt the hand on her waist, and her face instantly flushed. Xiao Yixian felt shy, emotional value plus 100. Her fingers clutched the hem of her clothes, her eyes drifted, and her cheeks and ear tips were bright red. After all, this was Xiao Yixian's first time being in such close proximity to a man. In the past, when faced with the pursuit of others, although she had a gentle personality, she always avoided them. In her eyes, those people were not as important as a single medicinal herb, but when it was Gu Fei. Xiao Yixian patted her cheeks, shaking off the wild thoughts in her mind. Gu Fei glanced at her, and the corner of his mouth unconsciously curved slightly. Next, Gu Fei and Xiao Yixian descended to the middle of the cliff. Just as they were about to approach the ground, a rock snake suddenly darted out, its cold forked tongue flicking out, its tail tip hooked up, as if it was about to swallow both of them in the next second. Although Xiao Yixian was not afraid of snakes, she would sometimes turn pale when suddenly startled by a snake while gathering herbs. But this time, the feeling she got was different from before. Xiao Yixian felt dependent and trusting, emotional value plus 100. Xiao Yixian leaned against Gu Fei, fearless. She relied on his slender body, feeling very secure in her heart. Because Xiao Yixian knew that with Gu Fei present, there would be no danger. Although he was not as tall and burly as those mercenaries, he would never fall. After Gu Fei effortlessly dealt with the rock snake, he finally saw an inconspicuous platform extending from the bottom of the cliff. He lightly tapped his toes, hovering slightly above the platform, and surveyed his surroundings. It was very cluttered here, and no one usually came, so they had nowhere to land. Gu Fei pondered for a moment, then raised his palm and unleashed a gust of wind. His control over his strength was extremely perfect. He only moved aside the surrounding broken branches and fallen leaves, without causing any other damage. Gu Fei descended with Xiao Yixian. After his hand released her, the warm sensation faded, and Xiao Yixian felt a strange emptiness in her heart. Xiao Yixian felt lost, emotional value plus 100. She came back to her senses, remembering that she had just been lingering over Gu Fei's hand that had embraced her waist, and couldn't help but blush. Soon, she seriously looked around, confirmed her destination, then stepped forward and called back. "Young master, this way." Soon they arrived at the entrance of a cave. It was clearly a sunny day, and the surroundings were very hot, but the cave in front of them exuded a cold yin kai. Next, Gu Fei led the way into the cave. The interior of the cave was quiet and dark, almost to the point where one couldn't see their own hand. As the two walked through it, Gu Fei remained calm, his steps steady, but Xiao Yixian's face grew paler. A faint chill in the cave lingered around her, and Xiao Yixian's body shivered slightly, feeling goosebumps all over. Gu Fei, however, felt fine. With his fighting kai protecting his body, he could naturally regulate his body temperature and was not afraid of the cold. In the quiet passage, there were only the subtle footsteps of the two, echoing one by one. Xiao Yixian was not incredibly brave, and faced with such a somewhat claustrophobic environment, she couldn't help but feel a little scared. Fortunately, Gu Fei was with her. Xiao Yixian secretly breathed a sigh of relief, following closely behind Gu Fei the entire way, not daring to fall a single step behind. They had been walking for quite a while, and the cave seemed endless. Xiao Yixian's feet were starting to ache, but she gritted her teeth and refused to say anything. Bang! Suddenly, Gu Fei in front abruptly stopped. Xiao Yixian was in a daze and caught unawares. Due to inertia, she crashed tightly into Gu Fei's back, resulting in direct, intimate contact between the two. "I'm sorry, young master. I didn't know you were going to stop suddenly. I'm really sorry, I just wasn't paying attention." Xiao Yixian felt flustered, emotional value plus 100. Xiao Yixian didn't know why, but her heart was pounding rapidly. She felt her face burning, her expression flustered, and she apologized to Gu Fei in a confused tone. Her voice carried an unnoticeable hint of a sob, which Gu Fei immediately heard. Even though Xiao Yixian was clearly hurt by the collision, she was still apologizing to him. Gu Fei smiled helplessly. "It's okay, I also didn't notice you were still following closely behind." Upon hearing this, Xiao Yixian's heart beat even faster, completely unlike the popular and calm Xiao Yixian in Qingshan Town. The next moment, Xiao Yixian looked around and understood why Gu Fei had suddenly stopped. The path ahead was blocked by a stone door. Stone doors like this usually have mechanisms. I'll go look for them. Xiao Yixian tentatively began. No need to trouble yourself. Gu Fei shook his head and struck out with his palm. The seemingly heavy stone door in front shattered in response. Xiao Yixian unconsciously flinched from the shattered stones, but was amazed to see that, under Gu Fei's control, not a single shard splashed towards them. Xiao Yixian felt admiration, emotional value plus 100. The young master is truly too strong. His control over fighting Kai has reached an extraordinary level. Xiao Yixian sighed in her heart. Next, the two ventured deeper into the cave to retrieve treasures, and saw 3 chests along the way. Because the Demon Fire Remnant map was with the skeleton, Xiao Yixian dared not approach, so Gu Fei went to retrieve the key. While moving, he also secretly took out the Demon Fire Remnant map hidden in the skeleton's arm and put it into his storage ring. Gu Fei did not intend to mention this item. Even if he did, it would be pointless, as Xiao Yixian could not even come into contact with such things. Knowing too much would not do her any good. Next, they opened the treasure chests one by one. Inside were the 7-colored poison manual, a flying dew technique, and a scroll of advanced profound rank dew technique. Xiao Yixian's eyes lit up, almost blinded by the numerous treasures. Xiao Yixian felt surprised, emotional value plus 100. Gu Fei glanced over them, not wanting any of them. With his current cultivation, unless there was an advanced earth rank or higher flying dew technique, anything else would be useless to him. "Young master, you don't want anything." Xiao Yixian felt guilty, emotional value plus 100. Seeing Gu Fei give her all the items from the 3 treasure chests, Xiao Yixian couldn't help but feel a little guilty. She had asked for help, but hadn't offered any benefits in return. However, it was also possible that Gu Fei genuinely didn't care for these things. Gu Fei couldn't bear to see the beauty frown, so he cast his gaze towards a pile of wild medicinal herbs not far away. "There are some good medicinal herbs over there. Let's consider them your reward for inviting me down into the cave this time." Gu Fei pointed to the medicinal herbs growing in the cave and said with a smile, "Okay, young master, please wait. I'll go and gather them for you now." Upon hearing this, Xiao Yixian smiled brightly, then took out her tools and diligently collected the medicinal herbs. Gu Fei watched Xiao Yixian working seriously, his eyes showing some appreciation. This woman, while not as beautiful as Xun'er in terms of pure looks, possessed a very unique temperament. Chapter 21, Secret Love. Xiao Yan arrives. Xiao Yixian was lowering her eyelids, head bowed, diligently plucking medicinal herbs. Her wispy long hair fell beside her. Her gaze was serious, making her look exceptionally beautiful. But such a pure young girl. Gu Fei closed his eyes. He knew that Xiao Yixian possessed the calamity poison body physique. Currently, Xiao Yixian was not yet aware of this matter. And in the 7-colored poison manual she had just acquired, there were descriptions of this physique. Once Xiao Yixian finished this task and read the 7-colored poison manual, she would learn about it. The calamity poison body was feared by countless people throughout history, yet also yearned for by many who wished to walk the crooked path. This was because these individuals could rapidly increase their cultivation by simply consuming poisons, almost without needing to cultivate. However, poison is poison after all. While cultivation increased rapidly, it also damaged one's body. Moreover, this process of cultivation advancement was filled with pain. Furthermore, the calamity poison body would erupt intermittently. If one couldn't withstand the eruption and became a slave to the calamity poison body, they would lose their sanity, go on a killing spree, and eventually lose their life. Therefore, many who had possessed the calamity poison body ended up killing their loved ones and then painfully committing suicide. The calamity poison body chose Xiao Yixian. This was her destiny. Her calamity poison body had not yet been unsealed, so she could, of course, pretend nothing had happened. She could pretend not to have discovered everything today, return to her peaceful yet happy life in Qingshan Town, and live out an ordinary existence. Of course, she could also, driven by a craving for power, unseal it and face the unknown other side. Gu Fei would not interfere too much with her choice. How to choose, whether to activate or not activate this physique, was entirely up to Xiao Yixian. Moreover, although the calamity poison body was terrifying, it was not entirely without a solution. At least, Gu Fei remembered that in the original work, Yao Lao had a method, and he even saved Xiao Yixian's life using it. He remembered it involved using the method of poison pills to eliminate the hidden dangers of the calamity poison body. This would remove the side effects of the calamity poison body, leaving only its positive strength. Gu Fei was leaning against the side of the cave, eyes downcast in thought, his gaze unfocused, when he was startled awake by Xiao Yixian's cheerful voice. "Young master, all these medicinal herbs have been collected, here you go." While Gu Fei was deep in thought, Xiao Yixian had already happily walked over, holding a pile of medicinal herbs. Her eyes sparkled, and a few drops of clear sweat beaded on her forehead from plucking the herbs. Her purple hair was damp with sweat, sticking to Xiao Yixian's neck and cheeks. Like a lotus emerging from water, the young girl's gentle expression added a few more layers of charm to her beauty. Gu Fei's lips curved into a smile. He accepted all the medicinal herbs into his storage ring, no longer refusing. "All right, let's head back to the herb-picking team. We've been out too long. I'm afraid someone might get suspicious." Xiao Yixian remembered that she and Gu Fei had been out for too long, and Mu Lai's wolf-head mercenary group had also been gone for a while. If they didn't reappear soon, people might become suspicious of her and Gu Fei, so she quickly spoke. Gu Fei nodded, then walked behind Xiao Yixian, letting her lead the way. The two exited the cave, one after the other. They reached the platform at the bottom of the cliff. This time, Gu Fei still directly embraced Xiao Yixian's slender waist and flew up. He was very gentlemanly, holding her loosely, but fearing Xiao Yixian might struggle and fall, he also used a bit of subtle force. Xiao Yixian experienced enjoyment. Emotional value plus 100. The time spent flying up was very short, but Xiao Yixian actually showed an emotion of enjoyment. Gu Fei unconsciously stole a glance at her. The girl's small face was flushed, her lips curved upwards, and her entire body was very relaxed. When Gu Fei placed her on the ground, she even looked at his hand with some reluctance before retracting her gaze. After this incident, Xiao Yixian's favorability towards Gu Fei deepened greatly. She herself hadn't noticed, but the truth was, this favorability had subtly begun to break through the boundaries of friendship. In fact, some romantic feelings between a man and a woman had begun to bud. When the two reached the top of the cliff, only Mu Lai's cold corpse lay there. Mu Lai seemed to have died with his eyes open, but in the future, he could only remain in this dense forest, never to breathe again, and might even be eaten by wild beasts before long. Those members of the wolf-head mercenary group, whose cultivation had been crippled by Gu Fei, had already fled when Gu Fei and Xiao Yixian descended to the bottom of the cliff. They dared not linger there, nor did they dare to return to their team. Their young master Mu Lai was dead, and they didn't dare to collect his body, leaving him alone there. Because they had failed to protect the young master, returning to the mercenary group would also mean death, and the group leader's methods of torture were even more terrifying. Therefore, the only thing they could do was to desperately escape the magical beast mountain range at this moment, and live as ordinary people from then on. Gu Fei, however, didn't care about these things. He disdained to care. As if nothing had happened, He returned to the herb-picking team with Xiao Yixian, his expression exceptionally calm. It was Xiao Yixian's first time doing such a thing. Although her acting was a bit stiff, she managed to fool all the mercenaries. Although some people noticed that many members of the Wolf Head mercenary group were missing, they didn't suspect her or him. On the Lois Avenue 100 li from Qingshan town, a black-clad youth was making his way with difficulty. His face still looked a bit young, but his eyes were extremely resolute. Looking closely, one could see that the black-clad youth was actually carrying an extremely massive black greatsword on his back. However, rather than calling it a greatsword, it was more like a thick iron greatruler without an edge or a point. The black greatsword also had no tip. At its end, it looked as if something had cut it in half, revealing a smooth, mirror-like cross-section. On the surface of the dark black greatsword, there were also some blurry, strange patterns, which extended all the way to the hilt, almost covering all parts of the sword body. The strange patterns, combined with the ancient dark black color, made it look quite mysterious. The length of the peculiar greatsword almost exceeded the youth's height. It looked as if the greatsword would crush the youth in the next second. This strange combination caused some passers-by, who occasionally traveled the road, to cast curious glances at him. This person was Xiao Yan. "Teacher, you said before that you wanted me to traverse the magical beast mountain range. I wonder what your intention is. Is it to place me in danger, so that I can unleash the true potential of my body?" Xiao Yan stopped and seemed to speak to himself, but the answer he expected did not appear. "It seems teacher hasn't woken up yet. All of this I can only rely on myself." After a long while, Xiao Yan sighed and continued forward. Chapter 22 Xun'er returns to Wooten City again. Wooten City, Xiao family. By this time, a considerable amount of time had passed since Xiao Yan left for his training. In the period before he left, with the help of old Yao, he left a large number of medicinal pills for the Xiao family, occupying the largest market. And the people of the Xiao family, like a long-awaited rain, their past of being constantly trampled upon fueled their fervent desire to become stronger. Using the large quantity of medicinal pills provided by Xiao Yan, they undoubtedly became the #1 family in Wooten City. Today, everyone suddenly discovered that Xun'er, who had left the family a year ago, had returned. This news spread rapidly as Xun'er returned to the Xiao family. Xun'er rushed to the Xiao family. "Uncle Xiao." When she saw Xiao Zhan, she still politely saluted Xiao Yan's father, Xiao Zhan, just as she had in the past. After Xiao Zhan smiled and gestured for Xun'er to dispense with the formalities, Xun'er immediately looked up and eagerly asked, "Uncle Xiao, where did brother Xiao Yan go?" Xiao Zhan was silent for a moment, then said, "Yan has been out training for some time." She didn't have time for more pleasantries, quickly thanked Xiao Zhan, then lifted her skirt and prepared to leave, immediately intending to search for Xiao Yan. This time, Xun'er secretly snuck out of the Gu family, accompanied not only by Ling Ying, an 8-star Du Huang, but also a Du Zong expert from the Gu family secretly following her. After all, Xun'er was Gu Yuan's beloved daughter. As the patriarch of the family, how could he not notice any stirrings in the ancient world? As soon as Xun'er planned to sneak out, he learned the news. His daughter was grown. He couldn't control her forever. When a bird's wings gradually grow full, he must give her the sky to fly. Gu Yuan sighed inwardly and still chose to let go, but how could he not send people to watch over Xun'er's safety? Thus, Ling Ying and another Du Zong expert were sent to follow Xun'er. Furthermore, if Xun'er encountered a life-or-death crisis, facing a desperate situation, as long as she had even 1 second to struggle, she could crush the spatial jade slip she carried, summoning Gu Yuan from the distant ancient world to come. For this daughter, Gu Yuan had put in a lot of effort, only hoping that she would grow up safely in the end. Gu Yuan silently watched Xun'er's departing back, letting out a long sigh. On this side, after some investigation, Xun'er quickly learned of Xiao Yan's whereabouts. After pondering for a moment, she decided to go with Ling Ying towards the Magical Beast Mountain Range to search for Xiao Yan. Magical Beast Mountain Range. At this moment, Gu Fei and Xiao Yixian's group had already collected many medicinal herbs. Although Gu Fei's storage ring still had a large amount of space, there were no more medicinal herbs he needed here. Brother Gu Fei, Xiao Yixian looked at Gu Fei. Before she could finish her sentence, Gu Fei nodded. So she told the mercenaries that they were preparing to descend the mountain. However, her beautiful eyes were full of worries, her brows tightly furrowed. Xiao Yixian generated a worried emotion, emotional value plus 100 Gu Fei. With the help of the system, naturally noticed that Xiao Yixian's state was not quite right, but he didn't say anything. Xiao Yixian was quite distracted, and as she walked, she didn't even notice when Gu Fei in front of her stopped, bumping into his sturdy back before she finally came back to her senses. Her brows still weren't relaxed, and her whole demeanor was somewhat downcast. Gu Fei stared at her for a moment, then shook his head. The reason Xiao Yixian was so worried was that, in the intervals of collecting herbs, she had already perused the 7-colored poison manual she obtained in the cave at the bottom of the cliff, upon seeing the 4 characters. Calamity Poison Body at the beginning of one page, her heart sank slightly, and an inexplicable feeling told her that if she finished reading it, she would regret it. But Xiao Yixian pursed her lips and continued to read. After finishing the entire 7-colored poison manual, she learned that she possessed the physique of the Calamity Poison Body. Xiao Yixian could feel that her Calamity Poison Body was not yet unsealed, so she tried her best to persuade herself not to overthink things. Right now, the matter of the Wolf Head mercenary group was clearly more important. Although Gu Fei had killed Mu Lai, the young leader of the Wolf Head mercenary group, this time without leaving any witnesses, and the surviving mercenaries didn't dare to go back and report the incident. However, the people of the Wolf Head mercenary group might very likely connect it to her. After all, among this group, Gu Fei was here for the first time, and logically, he shouldn't have had any conflicts with Mu Lai. The vast majority of the remaining mercenaries were not as strong as Mu Lai and couldn't have killed him, and the very few who were stronger than Mu Lai couldn't afford to offend the Wolf Head mercenary group. Therefore, if they thought carefully, they might suspect Xiao Yixian. If Xiao Yixian continued to return to Qingshan Town, the people of the Wolf Head mercenary group would probably not let her off. Although Gu Fei was strong, he probably wouldn't continue to stay in a small place like Qingshan Town. Xiao Yixian's clear purple eyes were full of worry. Xiao Yixian generated a worried emotion, emotional value plus 100 Gu Fei side. He naturally saw Xiao Yixian's worries. It was impossible for him to wait for Xiao Yixian to figure it out herself, because that girl's mind was always prone to overthinking. Gu Fei stepped forward and softly said, "Xiao Yixian, are you worried about retaliation from the Wolf Head mercenary group after returning to Qingshan Town?" His expression was gentle, and his gaze was fixed on Xiao Yixian. She hesitated for a moment. "Yes, young master, you might not know, but the Wolf Head mercenary group is the strongest mercenary group in all of Qingshan Town. Their young leader died, and the mercenary group won't let it go. Moreover, Mu Lai was the leader's son." Xiao Yixian nodded, admitting it frankly. Xiao Yixian was overly worried. The Wolf Head mercenary group acted ruthlessly, and anyone who offended them never came to a good end. Now that their young leader had died inexplicably, the retaliation would be even more terrifying. Gu Fei smiled and said nonchalantly, "No need to worry, rest assured. I will naturally resolve all troubles cleanly. Next, I will ostensibly leave first, but I will actually stay secretly in Qingshan Town for a few days. If anyone dares to act improperly towards you, I will deal with all of them." Gu Fei paused in his words. "You just need to be a good Xiao Yixian. Leave everything else to me." Xiao Yixian generated a touched emotion, emotional value plus 100 Xiao Yixian stared blankly at Gu Fei. The confidence in his voice unconsciously stirred a warm current in her heart, making her feel a strong sense of security. Gu Fei looked down at the purple-haired, purple-eyed girl. Her eyes were shallow, and a faint mist welled up as if she was about to cry. In Qingshan Town, everyone respected Xiao Yixian, but no one had ever said to her, "You just need to be a good Xiao Yixian. Leave everything else to me." Xiao Yixian's throat felt a little choked, and the long-lost feeling of her heart beating accelerated again. Xiao Yixian generated an admiring emotion, emotional value plus 100. She didn't say anything more, but her expression became much calmer, and she followed Gu Fei down the mountain. Chapter 23. Come on, I'll take you to kill someone. After returning to Qingshan town, Gu Fei immediately went into hiding, not showing himself in front of others. He looked deeply at Xiao Yixian, telling her not to worry, and then fell silent. Xiao Yixian generated a feeling of loss, emotional value plus 100, although a plan had been made in advance. Xiao Yixian still felt a pang in her heart when she watched Gu Fei suddenly disappear. She hid the fluctuations on her face, her expression calm, and as Gu Fei had instructed earlier, when Boss Yao asked, she announced that the powerful alchemist had already left. She said that after Gu Fei obtained the satisfactory medicinal ingredients, he separated from the herb-gathering team when descending the mountain. That esteemed adult actually left. Boss Yao listened and responded faintly, regretting in his heart that he hadn't managed to curry favor with that esteemed alchemist. In Qingshan town, at the Wolf Head Mercenary Group station. She was greatly enraged after learning that his son, Mu Lai, had died tragically, with no one to collect his body. Leaving him alone in the magical Beast mountain range, his eyes were bloodshot, and the cup he held in his hand was instantly crushed to powder. Glass shards fluttered down, and Mu Shi's expression was sinister as he gnashed his teeth. He was naturally not foolish. After much thought, the only suspect was Xiao Yixian. He knew that Mu Lai's death was related to the Xiao Yixian from the Wan Yao pharmacy, and couldn't help but immediately send people to kill Xiao Yixian to vent his anger. However, at first, he didn't know that the powerful alchemist protecting Xiao Yixian had already left, and out of concern for his face, he was waiting. News came from his subordinates, saying that Xiao Yixian claimed Gu Fei had already left first. Mu Shi smiled sinisterly, his expression full of murderous intent. Go, send someone to inform Boss Yao of the Wan Yao pharmacy to hand over Xiao Yixian. Otherwise, if I come personally, the treatment will not be the same. His subordinate rarely saw such a gloomy Mu Shi, and he tremblingly whispered yes, before rushing to the Wan Yao pharmacy. At the same time, Boss Yao of the Wan Yao pharmacy also revealed his true colors after repeatedly confirming Gu Fei's departure. He was very smooth and shrewd in his dealings with people, and naturally saw that Gu Fei had been intentionally or unintentionally protecting Xiao Yixian before. Now that Gu Fei had truly left, wasn't Xiao Yixian at his mercy? Boss Yao had always known a little about the treasure trove at the bottom of the cliff, but had never shown it. It was also because of this that he had always harbored greed, wanting a share of it. Boss Yao knew that Xiao Yixian and Gu Fei must have retrieved the treasure trove on this trip. Now that Gu Fei had left, he immediately sent people to put Xiao Yixian under house arrest and relentlessly questioned her about the whereabouts of the treasure trove. The intensity was such that they were practically about to search her body. Furthermore, after receiving Mu Shi's message, Boss Yao agreed to Mu Shi without hesitation. He curled his lips, revealing a sinister smile. Boss Yao intended, after extracting the treasure trove's location, to hand Xiao Yixian over to Mu Shi for him to vent his anger. Xiao Yixian was suddenly placed under house arrest, and her intelligence quickly led her to discover that this was Boss Yao's conspiracy. She naturally couldn't believe it, because Boss Yao usually appeared kind and gentle, and had never even spoken harshly. She also overheard Mu Shi's name in their conversation. It was likely that Mu Shi was demanding her from Boss Yao. This series of events happened so quickly that Xiao Yixian was very worried. However, she recalled Gu Fei's instructions to her earlier in the magical Beast mountain range and gradually calmed down. That night, Boss Yao's subordinates had another round of fruitless interrogation and left angrily. Xiao Yixian leaned against the wall, somewhat fatigued, her gaze vacant. It seems that with my departure, many people indeed want to make a move against you. Xiao Yixian, are you all right now? Xiao Yixian generated a feeling of surprise, emotional value, plus 100. Xiao Yixian heard the familiar gentle voice, abruptly opened her eyes, full of surprise. It turned out that Gu Fei had reappeared, directly in Xiao Yixian's room. He walked over step by step, picked up a chair and sat down in front of Xiao Yixian. "Brother Gu Fei, you're finally here." Xiao Yixian generated a feeling of emotion. Emotional value plus 100. Xiao Yixian had endured a day of questioning and coercion. Although she hadn't suffered any physical harm, her heart was very weary. Now, finally seeing Gu Fei, her eyes were red and moist, filled with emotion. "Let's go, I'll take you to kill people." Gu Fei smiled slightly, his expression unchanged from usual when he spoke these words. But his words made Xiao Yixian pause. Xiao Yixian generated a feeling of emotion. Emotional value plus 100. Xiao Yixian couldn't describe what she felt in her heart at that moment. A mix of sourness and numbness, yet not unpleasant. Next, Gu Fei led Xiao Yixian, walking directly and swaggeringly out of the room. Xiao Yixian's heart sped up for a moment. Then she saw that the fierce guards who had been sitting at the door of the room were all sprawled on the table, as if in an unbreakable dream. They first went to Boss Yao's residence. Boss Yao had already retired at this time. Hearing faint, rustling sounds, he abruptly sat up and sharply demanded, "Who's there?" "It's me." Gu Fei approached him, with Xiao Yixian following behind him. The two people who shouldn't have been there appeared together, and Boss Yao was stunned. Then cold sweat broke out on his palms. Boss Yao generated a feeling of guilt, emotional value plus 10. He feigned ignorance, asking, "Is there something you need, bringing Xiao Yixian to my room in the middle of the night for a visit?" His body, however, kept retreating until Gu Fei's cold eyes fixed him in place. Gu Fei lightly raised his palm, and a terrifying Kai current brewed in his hand. Boss Yao generated extreme fear, emotional value plus 15. Boss Yao immediately knelt down, crying and begging for mercy. "My lord, spare my life. I locked Xiao Yixian up to protect her. She wants to kill her to vent his anger. Everything I did was for her own good." Gu Fei no longer wasted words. He had secretly observed the entire course of events during this time and knew that Boss Yao's words were all lies. The next moment, he swiftly and decisively unleashed a palm strike. The terrifying Kai current precisely pierced through Boss Yao's chest, leaving him, like Mu lie before him, breathless before he could even react. Xiao Yixian pursed her lips and said nothing. Gu Fei then took her to the Wolf Head Mercenary Group's station and found Mu Shi. During this time, Gu Fei had witnessed the maliciousness of both Mu Shi and Boss Yao, so he struck without mercy or hesitation. Mu Shi generated a feeling of fear, emotional value plus 10. He didn't give Mu Shi a chance to quibble, but instead, with a light palm strike, made Mu Shi's fear-filled eyes completely freeze. Xiao Yixian stood behind Gu Fei, quietly watching him deal with both Boss Yao and Mu Shi. Xiao Yixian generated a feeling of gratitude, emotional value plus 100. Although Gu Fei killed without batting an eye, Xiao Yixian was not afraid, because she understood that these people deserved to die, and Gu Fei was standing up for her. She was grateful to Gu Fei from the bottom of her heart. Without Gu Fei, her current situation would likely be extremely difficult. Chapter 24, Too Much Poison. Xiao Yixian glanced back at Mu Shi's ugly, unresigned face, her heart devoid of any ripples, and followed Gu Fei silently back to her room. In the night, Wan Yao Pharmacy was eerily silent. Boss Yao's death had yet to be discovered. Xiao Yixian lay down on her fragrant bed, a faint smile gracing her lips, as she secretly looked at the young man sitting quietly by the bed. That face was incredibly reassuring, and the occasional smile he showed seemed very approachable. He was completely unlike the Gu Fei who, moments ago, had expressionlessly and decisively killed Boss Yao and Mu Shi. Yet, Xiao Yixian felt a warmth in her heart, knowing someone was protecting her. This time, to help Xiao Yixian, Gu Fei had killed so many people in Qingshan town. And they weren't just nobodies. Among them, one was Boss Yao, the owner of Wan Yao Pharmacy, who usually had dealings with many people. Another was even more famous in Qingshan town. Mu Shi, the two-star Dou master leader of the strongest mercenary group, the Wolf Head Mercenary Group. Xiao Yixian, being intelligent and perceptive, naturally understood that she could no longer live the peaceful life she yearned for in Qingshan Town. If she insisted on staying in Qingshan Town without Gu Fei's protection, she would likely find herself in a difficult position. So when Gu Fei turned to her and asked casually, "Xiao Yixian, what do you plan to do next?" Xiao Yixian thought for a moment, then smiled, her eyes curving, and said, "As for me, I want to live in the small mountain valley I discovered earlier for a while." Gu Fei did not press further. Since Xiao Yixian had already made up her mind, he didn't need to worry about her too much. Afterward, Xiao Yixian jumped off the bed, stood by the window, and blew a whistle. Gu Fei keenly heard the sound of wings flapping violently in the distance, a sound that came from far away and then grew closer, finally slowing down and landing outside the window. A crisp tapping sound came, and Xiao Yixian pushed open the window. A blue hawk was perched on the flat ground outside, its intelligent eyes looking at them. Xiao Yixian agilely climbed out the window and walked up to the massive blue hawk. The blue hawk lowered its head to look at her, leaning against Xiao Yixian very docilely and affectionately. Xiao Yixian turned her head, stroking its smooth, soft fur, which elicited a series of clear chirps. "This is my pet demonic beast, Blue Hawk, a first-level flying demonic beast." Noticing Gu Fei's gaze, Xiao Yixian explained, blue hawks were common in the magical beast mountain range, but for Xiao Yixian to tame one, she must have put in a lot of effort. Xiao Yixian stood there, hesitating for a moment, then turned to Gu Fei and stammered, "Brother Gu Fei, can you accompany me there?" Xiao Yixian pleaded. It wasn't that she was afraid of danger, but a strange reluctance filled her heart, making her impulsively make the request. Xiao Yixian generated anticipation. Emotion value plus 100. Gu Fei pretended to think for a long time, and under Xiao Yixian's somewhat expectant gaze, he slowly agreed, nodding gently. Xiao Yixian generated happiness. Emotion value plus 100. Xiao Yixian showed a faint smile and boarded the blue hawk's broad back first. Afterward, Gu Fei no longer flew on his own, even though he had the ability to fly. Next, Gu Fei followed Xiao Yixian onto the blue hawk's back. After confirming they were both seated securely, the blue hawk flapped its wings and slowly ascended into the sky. The experience at high altitude was quite interesting. Xiao Yixian, no matter how calm she usually was still a young girl, and she was very excited, leaning forward to look at the distant ground. "Brother Gu Fei, that's my favorite shop to go to." Got it, be careful." Although there was plenty of room on the blue hawk's back, Gu Fei was afraid Xiao Yixian might move too much and accidentally fall off, so he sat very close to her. The moment Xiao Yixian turned her head, her lips brushed Gu Fei's cheek. She shivered all over, only then realizing what she had just done, and her face instantly turned crimson. This action also gave Gu Fei a strange, ineffable feeling in an instant, and both of them fell silent. Xiao Yixian generated shyness, emotion value plus 100 after that. Xiao Yixian became much more well-behaved. Soon after, the blue hawk flew over the edge of the magical beast mountain range and arrived at a basin. This basin was where Wan Yao Pharmacy's herb-gathering team had previously hired a group of mercenaries to gather medicinal herbs. However, the blue hawk went to the very depths of the basin, a place that was perpetually shrouded in mist. From a distance, Gu Fei could only vaguely make out a silhouette. In the depths of the basin, the blue hawk slowly descended, and the small mountain valley was actually filled with rich energy. Gu Fei was somewhat surprised. Although the richness of this energy couldn't compare to the ancient world, it was much stronger than outside. Xiao Yixian generated pride, emotion value plus 100. "How is it, Brother Gu Fei? Isn't this place good? This small mountain valley is completely isolated from the outside, and the sky is covered by thick fog, making it extremely hidden. If I hadn't stumbled upon it by chance, I probably wouldn't have discovered this wondrous place." Looking at Gu Fei's somewhat surprised expression, Xiao Yixian chuckled with a hint of pride. "It is indeed good. Gu Fei nodded. Next, Xiao Yixian led Gu Fei to a straw shed. This was where she had temporarily stayed when she came here before. Gu Fei didn't mind and gladly settled in. Arriving at this refreshing and energy-rich place, Gu Fei's mind also relaxed, and he and Xiao Yixian enjoyed a moment of unique tranquility. There was no one in this small mountain valley, only the creatures of nature. However, early the next morning, Gu Fei found that Xiao Yixian had not come out for a long time. He couldn't help but feel a little worried, knocked on the door of the thatched hut, and after no response, he pushed it open directly. Inside, smoke swirled and Gu Fei squinted. A large amount of poisonous gas was emanating from within. Gu Fei couldn't help but sigh, shaking his head helplessly. It seemed she still chose this path. This poisonous gas was fatal to others, but it had no effect on Gu Fei. Gu Fei gently waved his sleeve and walked straight in. The smoke in the room gradually dissipated, revealing Xiao Yixian on the bed, her eyes tightly closed, her expression quite pained, and her brows furrowed. Her originally rosy, pretty face was now also showing a strange seven-colored hue. After a brief check of Xiao Yixian's condition, Gu Fei understood that she was not in any life-threatening danger. It was just that her cultivation was too low, and this silly girl had consumed too many poisons at once, making her unable to digest them. It seems I'll have to watch over you for a while. Gu Fei sat cross-legged beside her, quietly guarding Xiao Yixian, waiting for her to wake up naturally. Although he could forcibly awaken Xiao Yixian, doing so might cause harm to her body. Although Xiao Yixian was not in life-threatening danger this time, Gu Fei kept an eye on her situation, fearing that some other accident might occur. Chapter 25. Xun'er's Rage. Please subscribe first. Qingshan Town. The young man with the black heavy ruler on his back walked curiously through the bustling market, looking around. He still had many scars on his body. Although they had healed, faint marks remained. An inconspicuous black storage ring was worn on the finger of his right hand. This young man was Xiao Yan, who had finally arrived at this small town closest to the magical Beast mountain range. Xiao Yan walked and stopped in the market, buying some necessary items. Additionally, he subtly inquired about certain news. This time, Xiao Yan had originally planned to enter the magical Beast mountain range for cultivation as soon as he arrived in Qingshan Town after leaving home. However, because the ancient demon faction had previously attacked Xiao Yan, and Yao Lao had fallen into a soul slumber to save him, Xiao Yan also suffered severe injuries. Although his injuries were mostly healed now, Xiao Yan himself was not confident enough to enter the mountain alone. Therefore, he intended to join a mercenary group to enter the magical Beast mountain range together, adding another layer of security for himself. While inquiring about news from the people in the market, he also heard about several major events that had recently occurred in Qingshan Town. Xiao Yan had heard of the Wolf Head mercenary group's great reputation early on in Qingshan Town. Upon hearing that person, his face flushed, recounting his admiration for the leader, Mu Shi. Xiao Yan heard of Mu Shi's identity as a two-star Du Master, and a longing for power arose in his heart. But then, the well-informed shop owner mysteriously pulled him aside and whispered, "The Wolf Head mercenary group, the strongest mercenary group with a Du Master expert, has been completely annihilated." Xiao Yan's pupils constricted sharply as he heard this news, lamenting how unpredictable life was. But what the shop owner said next shocked him even more. It said that they were wiped out by a mysterious young alchemist who looked only 16 years old, single-handedly destroying the entire mercenary group. After hearing this, Xiao Yan walked out of the shop, his expression still somewhat dazed, truly terrifyingly strong. Such a powerful person, I'm afraid Nalan Yanren, the so-called young sect master of the Cloud Mist sect, cannot compare to him at all. The current Xiao Yan was merely an ordinary Du cultivator, so he only sighed at such matters with no other thoughts arising in his heart. The reason he chose to come to the magical Beast mountain range this time was that Yao Lao, before falling into a soul slumber due to the depletion of his soul power, hoped he would come here to cultivate for a year. And Xiao Yan's plan was to cultivate while searching for spirit medicine that could restore Yao Lao's soul. Yao Lao's soul damage this time was likely quite severe. Xiao Yan had called out to him countless times along the way, but received no response. Although he was worried, he had no choice but to take things one step at a time. By noon the next day, Xiao Yan finally chose a mercenary group to enter the mountain with. And 2 days after Xiao Yan entered the mountain, Qingshan Town welcomed 2 other distinguished guests. A graceful young miss with a beautiful face and flowing long hair strolled through the market, stopping occasionally, her eyes shining as she looked at an item, tugging at the sleeve of the elder beside her to pay for it. Ling Ying naturally sighed, helplessly buying it for his young miss. Many shop owners and mercenaries watched these 2 wealthy strangers with varying degrees of interest, their scrutinizing gazes lingering on them. In reality, she was using such high-profile behavior to try and lure out the big fish she wanted. If Brother Xiao Yan were here, he should have known of her arrival and come to find her by now. Why is he nowhere to be seen? Seeing that this method was not working for Xun'er, she had no choice but to personally inquire whether a young man with a black heavy ruler on his back had been in Qingshan Town in the past few days. Xun'er inquired for half a day until the sun set, dusk deepened, and night had already fallen before she finally found some clues. She had gotten the news, but Brother Xiao Yan had already left a step ahead. Xun'er returned to her residence, propping her chin and sighing slightly. It seems we arrived late. Brother Xiao Yan has already entered the magical beast mountain range. Ling Ying nodded, saying nothing, for he knew Xun'er would have her own ideas. Sure enough, Xun'er looked at the distant mountains outside the window, pondered for a moment, then clapped her hands and said excitedly to Ling Ying, "How about I directly enter the magical beast mountain range to find Brother Xiao Yan?" Although the outer reaches of the magical beast mountain range posed no threat to Xun'er, no one had yet thoroughly explored what demonic beasts lurked in its inner regions. To ensure Xun'er's safety, Ling Ying did not want to persuade her further and only intended to follow silently. Next, Xun'er also entered the magical beast mountain range, following Xiao Yan's footsteps. Fortunately, she had a treasure for tracking, but finding one person in the vast magical beast mountain range was still extremely difficult. On the other side, although Xiao Yan had chosen a group to enter the mountain, with not long after entering, he quietly detached himself from the mercenary group, opting to cultivate alone. After all, these mercenaries, seeing Xiao Yan's young age, would protect him somewhat when encountering demonic beasts, which wouldn't allow Xiao Yan to temper himself effectively. So, he gritted his teeth and chose to brave the dangers, exploring the magical beast mountain range alone. Because Xiao Yan separated from the group, the traces he left alone were more hidden and difficult to discover. Therefore, even with Ling Ying's help, Xun'er did not find Xiao Yan in a short time. Xun'er was very patient, following Ling Ying, walking all the way into the magical beast mountain range. Suddenly, a voice interrupted her steps. "Young miss, I seem to smell something familiar here. It's not quite right." Suddenly, Ling Ying spoke with a hint of surprise, his expression quite unexpected. Xun'er stopped, turned to look at him, her face serious. She was clear about Ling Ying's strength. If Ling Ying said there was a problem, then there truly was a problem. As a bodyguard, Ling Ying's greatest strengths were his stealth and reconnaissance abilities. However, the aura that he found very familiar, belonging to Gu Fei, was very faint, and Ling Ying could not determine its exact nature. He only knew that this aura was very likely to belong to someone from the ancient clan. Xun'er took a few steps closer, and Ling Ying hesitated for a moment. "I cannot determine who this aura belongs to, but it is undoubtedly from someone of the ancient clan, and their strength is unknown." Gu Fei himself was skilled at concealing his aura, and the aura left along the way was from several days ago, so Ling Ying's ability to discover it was extremely impressive. Although Ling Ying's strength was profound, he had no way of determining the owner of this aura. After hearing Ling Ying's words, Xun'er's expression froze. Ling Ying's discovery made Xun'er feel extremely panicked and filled with anger. Because of the precedent set by the ancient demon, even if this judgment was baseless, Xun'er still worried that this time, another person from the ancient clan was going to try and kill brother Xiao Yan. Therefore, Xun'er became even more eager to find Xiao Yan and confirm his current safety. Brother Xiao Yan's strength is not yet robust. If he faces an assassin sent by someone from the ancient clan, will a mysterious person save him again this time? If not, what will become of brother Xiao Yan? We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Thank you for supporting the channel and enjoying these novel audiobooks. Every subscribe, like, and comment helps us grow faster. If you love revenge stories, overpowered MCs, rebirth novels, and fantasy audiobooks, make sure to subscribe and join the journey.